I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. In case of fire, there are two ways to exit the chambers. To my left, your right is down through the double doors. Turn left again through the double doors, down a flight of stairs. Turn left at the bottom of the stairs and go outside the building. The best way, perhaps, is at the rear of the chambers through the double doors, down the steps, and again, as far away from the building as possible. The Secretary, take the roll.
Charles Durin.
Here.
Charles Ladd.
Here.
Nick Lefakis.
Here.
Mary Scott.
Here.
Ken Nelson. Here. Virginia Higley.
Here.
Linda DeGray.
Here.
Sarah Gruber.
Here.
Guillermo Salazar.
Here.
And Richard Suzak is here.
Full complement tonight. Very good.
Here too.
Town Attorney's report, we have done. Code enforcement, we had quite a lot. Any questions from the code enforcement report to, well, I don't know, Jen or Lori? No?
Oh, Rick's not here, so no questions.
He doesn't have to be here.
He doesn't have to.
No.
They'll find out, that's all.
Yeah, no, we're good.
None? Okay. Approval of minutes, September 27.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any additions, errors, or omissions?
I just had one question. It says when the roll call was taken that Guillermo was absent, and then it says Charlie Durin seated him. I believe Guillermo was here at the last meeting.
I wouldn't have, yes. Oh, no, I might have seated him if he wasn't. Okay. Anything further? All in favor as amended?
I'll abstain.
601. Okay. November 6th, right, sorry. No.
October 18th.
October 18th. Wrong information here.
Not even the 6th.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes from October 18th.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any additions, errors, or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. 601 again. At this point in the meeting, is there anyone in the public that would like to address the commission? Though you may not discuss anything that's on the agenda this evening, any matter that is before the commission that is not acted upon. Anyone want to address the commission at this time? Anyone want to address the commission at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on. Bond releases, there are none. Old business, 91 Simon Road, this is continued to November 15th. New business, this is a legal ad public hearing, there isn't one. The site plan review, there aren't any. Other business, informal discussion concerning Blair Manor. Is the individual here? This again, be careful of what you ask or how you answer, because this is not a public hearing and it's only for information. And depending upon what you say, you don't want it misinterpreted. Yes.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Donald Poland. I am a planner with the firm of Gilman York. With me tonight is Dusty McMahon, who is an architect. We represent the property owners for Blair Manor, and as you're probably aware, it's been closed.
Excuse me, Lori, do you have permission for them to discuss with the applicant or for the owner?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. All right, okay.
So essentially the company is called Pacifica. They're based in California. If you Google Pacifica, you'll see who they are. They had purchased the debt on 4 properties, one of which was Blair Manor. All 4 were convalescent homes. And if you're familiar with what's going on with convalescent homes, the state of Connecticut's not renewing licenses on beds, and therefore 3 of the 4 properties were closed, one of which was Blair Manor. As a planner, if you think from a land use perspective, historically we have allowed convalescent homes in residential zones. Makes sense. Residential kind of use or what have you. However, reach the point when it can no longer be a residential use, then creates kind of a challenge. So essentially, the owner has this property that now doesn't have a viable use. The state will not relicense as a convalescent home, and it's in I'm forgetting. It's in an R zone. I can't remember the specific underlying.
33 probably.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just dealing with a reg from another town. I'm thinking R15, and I just know that's not you. So we reached the point where kind of what exactly can we do with this property? So we reached out to staff, the owner along with myself and Dusty, and then met with your staff to have a discussion about possibilities. We essentially do have a concept that we think could work for a viable future of the property. And we're here tonight to just kind of get some direction from you, kind of what you think, what your reaction is. We recognize these are non-binding discussions. Nothing you say we will hold against you in the future. We really just want some direction, and we want to make sure that we're here before we show up with some type of application asking for something. Therefore, we'd like your input. If you'd allow us, we'd love to pass out the concepts, and if you'd allow us to have Dusty actually explain those concepts to you.
It's a very just kind of high altitude conceptual, something to kind of orient you primarily with the property, the building. And then the second page is kind of, again, higher altitude of what we think we might be able to repurpose part of the building for.
Thank you.
As you look at the first page, it's just kind of a general as-built that we did of the building, the number of wings, number of rooms. Originally, there were approximately 50 rooms. They varied in different sizes, so they could have anywhere from 1 to 3 beds. I'm sorry.
You should have a microphone if you're going to be talking. Oh, you should have a microphone because you're talking and the public can't hear you.
It's right on your left.
No, problem.
If you want to stand and talk,
So as you look on the,
it is on.
You have to be right up against your mouth.
what about like that? Okay, there. All right. Feels like karaoke night. Okay, here we go. So as you look at the first page, again, this is just kind of a general description of the building. I apologize. Most of you are probably more familiar with this building's history than I am. But what we call building, I'm sorry, they all say B-wing, don't they? Sorry, intern. So if you look at the 14-room B-wing, let's start with that one, okay? That was the original part of the nursing home. That was the original construction. If you look at the 19-room B-wing pointing up, that was the next addition. And then the 19-room B-wing pointing to the left was the third addition. So it was all done in 3 different pieces. One nice thing about that is there is a definitive architectural break between each wing. So when you do things like firewalls, fire enclosures, doors, security doors, it's already kind of broken into 3 pods, for lack of a better word. The central area had a couple of different additions onto it, but it has a central kitchen, a commercial laundry, shared dining space, a day room, and reception room, and then there, as you can imagine, are therapeutic, bathing, and water therapy, and all kinds of different things in there. If you look on the second page, and the nice thing about this building is, unlike some of the others that we're looking at, It's not concrete block or cast in place concrete. Yeah, we've looked at a number of these types of facilities that are cast in place concrete or concrete block with all the utilities in the walls, and as you can imagine, there's just really nothing you can do with that. And when you look at a building like this, because each one of these rooms had its own at least water closet, if not full bathroom, there's a lot of plumbing that you would never see in any other type of use other than like a nursing home, not even in standard residential. So what we're thinking about, or what we'd like to propose for your consideration, is the idea that other than just, as Don said, with what's happening in the nursing home industry, everyone's trying to privatize. The state and the Fed are trying to get people to stay at home. There's more privatization of that industry with home care facility, home visiting nurses. So there's just really no interest or opportunity for this thing to come back as a nursing home. What we thought might be a good use for it and what we see in the area are a range of the type of uses you see on the second page: medical office, professional office, and then possibly everything from like children's dance studio, yoga, karate type uses, each wing taking its own program use. The red wing, or what is shown as the professional office, actually has conference rooms, and we're not sure why they were built this way or how they were used at Blair Manor, but conference rooms and even a little library down at that end of the wing. The yellow wing that we've said would make the best for the medical office, that happens to have most of the water therapy and tied to the back of the therapeutic rooms, so there could be some conversion there. And then the blue wing, if it was something like either massage studios, yoga, there's a lot of health-focused and aerobic-type exercise classes in the area. It has a full industrial laundry, so those being generators of things that would need to be regularly washed and changed, that could work there as well. We've also worked with the Melville Trust, a group that did a group down in Hartford, downtown. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Firebox Restaurant or the Billings Forge, where they had a full operational kitchen, and I see nodding your head that they've actually provided jobs and training for inner city kids, and they also do other outside of inner metropolitan areas, but cooking classes and courses to give kids the ability to learn how to actually go out, work in restaurants and this kind of thing. They also provide the breads that are all the Max restaurants, and a lot of other pastries that are then shipped off-site, so they're not necessarily sold on-site. So again, just looking at repurposing those resources that are in the facility. And what we see at the green at the front that we just called entry with the green arrow, thinking that could be sort of a collaborative WeWork type space with shared services like copiers and things that a lot of people that work at home or on the kitchen table in this area could go or have a modest membership fee to where they could actually have shared resources they might not be able to afford by being an independent or sole proprietor, or would never be able to afford or fit into their own home. So it's just kind of the concept that we looked at based on the needs analysis, the void and gap. I know one of the first things some of you might be thinking when we propose professional or medical office space is there's a really nice couple of nice brick buildings just down the road that are sitting there completely empty right now. But that's Class A space that would be really expensive that somebody who might work at the kitchen table may not be able to afford to go in and rent. This would be a nice conversion and well done, so it's a very suitable and presentable space with shared resources, but offer a more affordable per square foot rent rate than some of the stuff that is just down the road but has had a challenge being leased. So again, nothing definitive. We have run enough demographic, void, gap, and economic analysis to feel confident that the general program as shown here conceptually could work. But as Don said, we wanted to touch base with you first respectfully before we started anything or went too in depth or discussing this or broadcasting this too much, to make sure that we weren't headed in a direction that would not be seen as palatable to the community or to the board.
So, if I may just continue a little bit, from a land use perspective, if you're familiar with this area, it's in the R44 zone. It has some additional R property next to it, and then across the street, somewhat diagonally, you have your local business zone. My initial thought in looking at this was maybe, bringing the business zone across the street, but it's not exactly lining up well. I wasn't feeling comfortable. And then in a meeting with staff and discussion with them, they introduced us to a provision in your regs, which is 5.60. It's the special requirements for the special development district. You actually have a floating zone provision that can be placed over a property that is vacant and/or is substantially vacant. So our general feeling at this point is that provision is probably the best provision for us to utilize. You're welcome to disagree, because we're open to that kind of direction. Everything about that provision actually kind of fits us, except for you have one interesting little provision in there. In 5.60.1 criteria, subsection C, it says that the building has to be vacant or substantially vacant for at least 24 months. We would really hate to sit around waiting. So our general thought at this point is a way to tiptoe into this process would be to first just come to you with a text amendment to that provision to reduce it down to 12 months, which would allow us to come in. And then we would essentially come to you with a master plan document, more built out than what you see here under the SDD provisions. And it was essentially be a zone change, I believe, and a special permit that would govern the approval. So that's where our general thoughts are right now. We're open to thoughts, ideas, criticisms, whatever you actually have for us. Any direction would be appreciated.
Yes, Ken.
What is the accessory structure in the back triangle?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The yellow one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not proposed to be a structure. What we were looking at was the approximate square footage of each wing if they were designated into pods.
Yeah.
And if you see where there's the bolder red, green, blue, and yellow arrows, that's where we would propose separate entrances for those various different business and uses. We then dedicated the slightly ghostier red, yellow, blue, and green are parking areas. So that triangle's not additional construction, it's a parking
No,
area.
but if you look in the triangle, there is an accessory
Oh,
structure
I'm
there.
sorry, you mean the existing?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's just a little utility shed, and that part of the property, there was a dimension wing, so it's a dimension garden. Just
Okay.
for this, so it's just for storage, and it's just a little metal building that would very easily probably be taken down
Okay.
as part of any of this.
All right, thank you.
Just one question. It looks like in the yellow parking area, is there access from the front of the building around through that area?
Yes, sir, around the
The setbacks and
see,
all?
there's actually kind of a flat drive. We did look at the setbacks enough for paving that we'd feel confident that we could engineer a pathway around that corner.
So, what's the size of the parcel?
I have it on document here. Give me one moment. It is 7.42 acres.
And-
So,
Yeah?
so
Go ahead.
I can tell you, we initially looked at the thing that's kind of worked the most in the overall greater Hartford market as of late has been multifamily apartments. And so the first thing I looked at as a potential use was multifamily. I believe you guys have a provision in your regulations for multifamily. It's a large minimum lot size, like 60 acres or whatever. So that was instantly kind of shut down. We're like, we've only got 7.42. So now what are other options? And that's what led us down the path to arrive here.
And how many square feet is the current structure?
I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I think like
26.
something like
35.
that. 30. It's in the range of around 30,000 square feet.
Thank you. Okay.
How much parking is there? I don't.
The existing, hang on one second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
It's numbered there. There's-
Just checking that, yes, those numbers reflect what, in the red and blue area, okay, so the red area, there are 28 existing. In the little green area, there are 16 existing. In the blue, we're not sure why it's configured the way it is, but people have been parking on the grass for years anyway. So what would actually fit within that blue area is closer to 62. And then what we feel we could fit into the yellow one in the back would be approximately 28. So, and I apologize, it's not clarified that, yes, in some of them it's the existing count, and others would be what would be proposed.
Just I want to be clear. What you're proposing is this to be more of a small office space, say for a doctor who has office maybe in Hartford or Stafford or whatever associated with the hospital, so he can come see us. And then the professional would be a smaller business type.
Like a CPA or an
CPA,
accountant.
right.
In the yellow wing, yes, like a family therapist, maybe.
Okay, so it's just more of the smaller offices as opposed to
Right.
turning into these.
We wouldn't lease for, and to be honest, code compliance for certain others, like, we would not be proposing trying to find a pro health to fill the entire wing. The other thing that's a little bit challenging sometimes with properties like this, like we said, so if you can imagine, if you can look at the floor plan page, you might be looking at, there are some rooms that do this L that had 3 beds in them. They're pretty good size. Then there's another one that's smaller beside, and they have just a little water closet between them. What we don't want to have to do is work out every single other bit, but we might take out every third bathroom. So it might be that each office has its own water closet, and you could do a little wall kitchenette, sink to it or something, which actually would be a nice amenity for exactly the kind of people you're describing.
It's sort of medical-related businesses.
Yes, sir, it could be, right.
I don't know how old the part that you quoted is for that the building has to be empty 2 years. Staff have any idea? Because there's been so much up and down with and
It certainly doesn't show any reference to an amendment, which, thank you. It doesn't show any reference to an amendment, so I assume that it was in there for the most part when the zoning regulations were adopted. So it's been there for a while. When were these adopted?
I think it sounds like, to me, I don't know if you got other people here, it's a viable opportunity to use a building. I don't know how the other people, I mean, and I don't really understand the 2-year deal because a building can, as they stated, can deteriorate rather rapidly.
Well, not only that, I mean, you could bankrupt the owner of the property.
Years
is a long time. And
Right. Yeah, it's a lot carrier.
I think I'm along with you, Charlie. Any potential use that would fit in with the least amount of disruption in the area, I would support that. And looking at what your plan is, it looks like that's what you're trying to accomplish. The only concern I would have is, Lori, has anybody looked to the right side where they want to bring the driveway around the corner of the building? What is beyond that? Is there a brook running through there? I'm concerned you may run into some wetlands restrictions or something like that.
We do know that there are wetlands to the other side, the part we didn't touch at all, and that's actually, looks like it's engineered to be a retention basin. So we haven't gone to that degree yet. We did walk it.
Yeah.
And I'm also a landscape architect, but in my gut and my feel, it felt, and somebody's been driving around there often enough.
Right, and I see that, yeah.
Exactly. So, but that's the kind of thing we would engineer. And that's also the kind of thing respectfully that we would kind of work backward from, that once we do enough engineering to understand what the site capacity really is, we would then kind of work backwards to the number of units or square footage we would finish out or fit out to see where we can find the balance of what we can provide for in parking or circulation, fire access and that kind of thing, and what we would, where we would adjust the interior program.
Right, because that back parking lot would definitely be a plus to the rear wing, getting
Right.
people closer, and I just hate to see something like that tie you up,
Well,
so.
and it's also the kind of thing, too, I'll be really honest with you, just coming from a practical side, those last 2 rooms, I did make reference on one of the pages that there's some roof damage. Those last 2 rooms in that wing, and again, none of us are making promises or commitments to each other at all tonight, okay? But those last 2 rooms have had a lot of water damage, and to be really honest, if we needed to, clip off that end and cap, and that's the kind of thing we could look at as well. But I do appreciate your comment about the owner could go bankrupt. And the other thing we did look at too was, what if somebody just leveled this thing and put in code compliant single-family lots? Nobody's ever going to do that because you would lose your shirt. It would literally have to be a charity opportunity to do so. And I'll tell you right now, we've been working with them about a year on this thing. Yeah. I was there once with my mother and my sister who were helping me do inventory to send stuff down after the latest hurricane for beds and wheelchairs and walkers for people that were evacuated from nursing homes, because that's what we're doing with this kind of stuff. When somebody broke into the building, we were there another time that we've had to call the police twice because there was someone living in one of the basements. So it's that kind of stuff too, that it becomes an unattractive nuisance that in time, if you don't do something with it, it just becomes a derelict and a danger to the neighborhood. That, again, I very much appreciate your comments that it's a practical opportunity to do something that otherwise could be a real long-term legacy derelict.
So really, you're looking for a zone overlay type?
Yeah, so our first step would be to come to you with a text amendment. Probably we'd turn that around immediately and see as quickly as possible to reduce that restriction on the 24 months. And then we would go through the process of engineering the site to come in under the special development district for a formal application process. I also just want to note, by going the SDD route, we're not opening up the property to every other permitted use within the zone if we were to ask to bring the local zone across the street or what have you. You guys would have control over the approval and what uses are being approved there, so.
That 24-month rule, I mean, is so unfriendly.
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing that I see, it says that 80% of it has to be vacant for, and then you have 24 months. So at 100% vacancy, so basically, you can almost subtract 6 months off of that, and by the time you start construction, you're going to be right on target at a year and a half. So it's one of those kind of things by the numbers. You're already more than halfway there. So I definitely would sort of support the fact that obviously we don't want somebody to just keep a building unoccupied for the sake of keeping it unoccupied. The only thing that I might add is that obviously it has to be in harmony with the surrounding neighborhoods, so that again, I can sort of envision this multi-tenant usage to be more traffic potentially in and out than a nursing home would have, and what we and I don't think that there's a light there, so basically it's always you have to pull out into traffic, and sometimes Route 190 can be significantly congested, especially at certain times of the day. So that probably should be a thought of how you're going to address that situation to make sure we don't have any real constraints or congestion at that point.
Yeah, at the very least, I don't believe we're at the square footage or parking spaces that would kick in the state approval process, but knowing it's a state road, we would reach out to the state and talk to them about any improvements, and we would do the required traffic studies or whatever as part of the formal application process. I appreciate your creative math. I'd just like to note for the record, if I were to come forward with that creative interpretation, you'd probably laugh at me. So.
but to your point, we do know that they had pretty much started taking patients out. There were only a few number of them there this time last year. So I'm not sure what the exact ratios were, but it was definitely on the lower side.
Okay. Lori, I got a quick question for you. I'm looking at the aquifer protection, and I know it looks like it's right on the edge of that. Is it in any of the aquifer protection zones? Okay.
No, it's not.
Okay. I just want to make sure that it doesn't fall into there. So, and I guess the other question was, do we have any?
Skidco district is out there. What effect would this have on the regulations of the Skidco overlay district?
Overlay.
Yeah, that came up when we met with you guys, and I think
we were just
we're
outside of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was. Yeah.
We can double check that, but I believe we're outside of it. We're not within Skidco.
Okay. I was thinking Hazardville, but yeah, Skidco. It was outside. I remember the conversation.
Yeah.
So.
All right. That answers that then.
So I think what they're truly asking is, do you agree that this is the path that they should take for this type of application?
I would.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. Yeah,
limited.
I definitely think.
Not taking a vote, just this is not a vote, but would you nod your head or just say yes or no?
I already did.
You did? Oh, okay. It sounds like
I think this is something that would be appropriate for that area. I don't think you're going to have the high. If you're going small offices like a CPA, whatever, CPA is not going to have 50 people sitting in his office at one time waiting. It's one at a time, so I don't think you're going to increase traffic flow.
I don't think you would any much more than a
Right,
nursing
and
home would.
they're right. I think it gives opportunity to other people, to have that.
I think it seems like a great concept, and I don't have any issues with it. My only, and it's not really a concern, but my only potential concern would be if you change the 24 months. That allows anyone to just leave their office empty, their building empty for a bit, and then repurpose it. Perhaps not with what's being, I don't have a problem with lessening the 24 months, but I really think we
come in and run through us
they still
anyway.
yeah, but if it's in the regulations or it meets the criteria, you cannot turn them down. We've been dragged into court a couple times because of that.
Well, it depends
But
on
anyway,
what they want to repurpose
looks
it as.
great.
Respect your concern.
Like I said, I think the way we would approach it is we'd ask for 12 months, not for 24. We wouldn't ask to eliminate it in full. At the end of the day, on the text amendment, you guys have the authority to approve, modify, and also that D word, I won't say it because I don't want that to happen. But basically, hopefully through that process, we could come up with a timeline that works for us, but also doesn't open you up to every property.
I'd be interested to find out when it actually officially closed.
And if I can offer something else too, I'd be interested in your line of conversation on that one too, that maybe if it's something that's a caveat or something to the regulation, that this actually went into foreclosure and was taken,
Yes.
and,
Absolutely. Thank
there
you.
might be certain
Yes.
other thresholds these have to meet.
Yes. Yes, I think yours is a good fit. I just worry for people that come in the door and point to you and say, well, and it does happen, unfortunately. Thank you.
Well, just along those lines, again, it's one of those kind of things where, there's sometimes the difficulty to rent something because the usage is not consistent with what's being, I guess, utilized at that particular time. And then there's the usage where it's just totally not being utilized. So that when it's not totally utilized, to have it sit there for 2 years and degrade is significantly,
I don't have any problem. I just like what he had said, put a little bit more teeth into it so that somebody watching buys a building and says, well, I don't like what I can do with the building. I'll just leave it empty for a few months, and then I'll come back.
We act as the economic development agents for a number of communities, and one thing that maybe along that line, maybe this kind of fits under you hear about opportunity zones, but maybe it's one of those things that helps kind of head off of the pass a property that could become derelict, because we see so many of those so often that sit there for 20 years empty, and after a while they just become this ghost nobody wants. So I mean, if it's certain criteria that it's shown as a proactive step on behalf of the community, the EDC, to make sure that properties don't go that direction.
And along what you're saying, how many of the industrial mills have sat empty for 50, 60 years because they stuck to their guns, and then 60 years later it's fallen down and they convert them over into residential apartments that look beautiful. And we have a huge one here in town. Maybe 50 years ago, if this board was a little more flexible, something could have happened there sooner. What you're doing, I think, is great for the community because, your chiropractor who's just starting out looking for a small space, it's almost like big business incubator space. And, I think it's going to be great to get a lot of people started in their careers as a...
Well, and that's a perfect example to kind of personalize it more. I have a very good friend who's a single mother who's a CPA who works out of her house. She's not comfortable having male clients come to her house all the time. So she has a place where she would have security, shared services, and community to,
Like an incubator.
There you go, exactly.
I think he's got a consensus.
I do, yeah.
Thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us, and we really appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
I do agree with Rich, though. By the time they get everything lined up, ducks in a row, they're going to be close to their 2-year mark anyway, so.
Don't hold back. Bring this stuff in and make move on it as fast as it helps you out.
Well, having met with the owner, I think you understand too, I think this gives us enough direction that I think we will actually start doing some of the surveying and engineering work that would give us a more respectable answer to let you know exactly what might happen here. So, thank you.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you for undertaking the fresh. Okay. Enfield Mall parking is the next one.
So, I was having a conversation with the consultant for the car dealers that were parking over there, and they wanted to know whether the Planning and Zoning Commission would rather A, see the cars moved, or B, have them come in and get a text amendment so they could be permitted.
Myself, I don't see a text amendment because that would carry through for forever and ever. It would just, to me, I think it would create.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, I agree. I think that, I know that the square is empty, and I had this conversation with the previous planner. If you're going to repurpose the square, you need it to be available, and I don't think parking cars is the way to go. That's just my personal opinion. It's just opening up a can of worms that every car dealership in town will go get more cars and put them in the square with a rental agreement.
What I'd said, I forget, I think it was talking with Jen, I'd like to see if maybe we could do something temporarily, but I'd like to see what the mall itself has done to repurpose or change things.
Yeah, it's really hard for those temporary regulations, unfortunately.
But, we were looking, well, in fact, it went before the state, I guess, or someone, to go into apartments or living upstairs and stores below. And I forget.
Yeah, that's in the Plan of Conservation and Development.
We submitted that.
Yeah.
For the project.
Yep, but I don't think car parking is part of the Plan of Conservation and Development.
It's a parking lot.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just from a usage viewpoint, the thing that I'm thinking is that, if there is a shopping center and it has active tenants, then obviously, all those parking spaces are utilized by the active tenants. If there are tenants or available areas to rent, then obviously there's excess parking available for those rental areas. So based upon the actual utilage of the mall itself or the store or whatever, would dictate what kind of excess parking they have. And ultimately, I could conceivably see that the owner can utilize some of his excess parking for auxiliary use, as long as it's not being utilized for retail requirements. But that's just a business deal that he has, and if he could show it, on his, plans or his records or whatever he has, that he has this excess parking and it is available for him to rent. And again, going back to, we don't want these owners to go bankrupt while they're waiting for something else to come along. That if they can get at least some income from this, rental agreement that they have for somebody else to utilize space that's not being utilized. And again, it keeps things active in those areas so that, you don't have derelicts and everything else showing up.
That's why I said I'd like to see what they've done.
So basically, along those lines,
I think you hit upon it, but the wrong way. Why can't the car dealerships rent a few of the units in the square? Then it's their parking. You can't have parking for somebody who's not there. Our regulations say it can't be more than 500 feet away from the business. So you'd have to change a whole bunch. And I think, if it's worth their while to park the cars there, they should be able to work out a deal with the square to take a few of the rental units and put a car or two in there. They used to bring cars in there all the time.
Well, I think essentially that's what they're doing, but they're not actually renting the unit. They're renting the parking that is associated with the vacant unit.
Yeah, they need to rent the unit.
When's the last time you were in the mall?
That's true.
Ken, I'm not saying it's not.
Asking you when the last time you were in there was.
A couple days ago.
Did you see the cars in the walkways for sale? No, you didn't.
No.
Because they do have cars in the mall with for sale signs.
But that's what I'm saying. They always have had it.
And it's a parking lot. And Westfield, if I'm correct, Westfield Shops is in bankruptcy right now. So I don't know who we're negotiating with But
the whoever's
we've got-
managing the square now,
Yes.
it's in bankruptcy, but it still has an office over there.
And-
Whoever is managing it can allow the car dealership to
okay,
lease.
the public parking that goes there for the buses, how's that any different?
That's what I was going to
Because
say.
it's a
How is that any
state
different?
agreement.
It's not. It's
It
not
is.
any different. It's a parking lot. Enfield lost in court unregistered vehicles. Okay, you can't enforce that anymore. The mall is struggling, and if they can bring some income in right now by parking cars there till they get over the hump and get a plan in place for
But
us,
why
that's
can't
fine.
they rent one unit and say, we're now part of the
that's
square?
a-
we
Cars
can
in the mall, and it's not your place to say what they can rent or.
But it's
they're
not
renting
your
a
place
unit.
to say it
They're
either.
renting a unit. They're renting the parking unit.
No, they're not.
How are they not? They're getting paid
Well,
for that
think-
parking.
For all intents and purposes, you could rent a unit for $1 and then pay. So
Thank
maybe
you.
that's what.
And then they're fit with our
but
zoning
maybe
regs.
that's what they're doing.
Yes.
So I don't know what their rental agreements are. However, the fact is that the use is not permitted at that zone. So the question is there some way that we could do a temporary use, and
Yep,
is that
and
something
bringing
that
them
the
into
commission wants
compliance
us
is
to
a good thing.
investigate?
Driving them out of there.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I think with the state, you'd have to have a contract with them, obviously, for the park and ride that's there, which has
Well,
parking.
there's park and ride,
And the
there's
state
ZBA
is
location
exempt
approval,
from zoning
there's
regulations.
Exactly.
off-site parking,
Still
there's a lot of
contract.
things that start playing into this.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean,
it's-
I think it's important to have the ability for them to park there, and I think that we need to find a way to make it happen because we have space there, and it's on the back side where nobody really is. I mean, the only thing I think over on that side is Party City, and that's it. So you have this huge open parking lot, and
Go Target.
The
Target, that's on the
question
other side, but
that I have, and
so
I'm not trying to take money out of their pocket, is what's going to happen if we rezone this, do something else? Where are they going to park all these cars? And why all of a sudden, and again, I don't understand the car business, and
I
I'm not
know.
even going to try.
No, I don't understand why. as
I do know they
G-Bill-
have to have inventory, but why all of a sudden, now that we have this big sea of parking
Because the
places,
previous
do they
planner
need to
allowed
allow it?
Leah did have, if it's them, up where the new hardware store is, and that was all Leah, and he had a large
Yep.
parking lot for his used
Yep.
cars on the right-hand side,
Yep.
which he decided to dispose of by selling.
Yep.
In fact, I think they did on one end of it, the one that's empty, I believe they used to do repair work and work on the inside too. So some of it's been created by themselves because they've sold off their outside storage areas.
I understand that part of it was because at the end of one of the seasons, they got a glut of cars from the manufacturers, and they didn't know what to do with them. And they didn't know what to do with them. Then it became a habit to leave them there.
Yeah.
They know how many spaces they have on their site.
Well, they're parking on
Why
the
are they
grass, and they've been
accepting
doing that for ages.
50% more cars than they can park.
Do we know what dealership it is, or is it a bunch of dealerships,
Yeah,
or?
Doesn't matter. How's
No,
it
it
matter? It doesn't matter what dealership it is.
It's the
That's-
use that we're concerned about. It doesn't, I know what you're saying, it's like, okay, well, if I know the dealership, I can determine how much parking they actually have. But if we're going to allow one dealership, we'd have to allow any dealership, so it wouldn't
that's-
necessarily matter.
going to be my next point.
Yeah.
That's what I said earlier, you'd create a major problem all over.
I don't think it's a good thing, but that's just me. Other people think it's good.
So we're just looking for direction from the commission, whether you want us to investigate temporary type zoning regulations. I'm not sure if that's even possible.
I think you,
Or if you don't, if you'd just rather not have it at all, then we could go in that direction. We're just looking for a direction, consensus.
Well, I think any plan put in place for the mall, they're not going to jeopardize redeveloping the mall over parking 200 cars there.
Right.
The
No,
cars are
that's
going to go. This is a temporary thing for them to try to pay for winter snow removal, because God knows the mall's not supporting itself right now. And it is a parking lot. It's not like they're parking on the dirt or anything. I mean, It
I
doesn't
know,
matter
but
whether
I'm
it's
wondering
registered or
how, if
unregistered.
if they're getting this income, if it stops them from pursuing doing something else.
No.
Well, I don't know what they charge or what they're getting from the.
I don't have a problem with people parking cars in a parking lot. If there's some way that it can happen, I think it's okay.
Then you just have to change the other part of the regulations to say people can park vehicles more than 500 feet from their business.
Well, that may not be an issue at all, though, right? Because Laurie stated that if need be, if we can find out, they may be doing that already. That may be part of the contract that they have in place. And to your point, somebody suggested it, which is what I was thinking too.
Right.
They could rent it for $1, and you said that there's space that they're leasing inside the
they
mall.
have in the mall, the cars are in there already. They're sitting there. You go tomorrow, walk through the mall. So they probably say, give us 500 spots. We'll rent a kiosk space, put a new car there, and it's covered. It
It's
covers exactly what you're saying.
Satisfying the regulation already.
And Lori, so if you just tell them, rent a kiosk space, park a couple new cars in the mall, it covers what Ginny's
But
worried
we don't
about.
allow car dealerships in the mall.
Thank you.
That's the problem. The use is not permitted there. Even if we wanted to let them do it tomorrow, the use is not permitted. So we'd have to create the regulations that would permit it.
What about
In
like
that zone.
Not allowing the car dealership means not allowing to do business in the mall, correct? But it doesn't mean that they cannot have a display as long as they're not attempting to sell. That is not a car dealership.
Right. So maybe what we could do is inventory holding area, which is what we called it in East Windsor, and Southern Auto was a big proponent of that.
Southern Auto would
Okay, they have inventory holding areas.
I have a question. Is this for display purposes, or is it's off-site only because
It's
they have to have
inventory.
the car? Right, so they're not displaying, they're not coming in, their customers not lining up. It's just to hold their stuff there. Right. So then I think maybe one interpretation is something like that, where you're not operating a car dealership. A car dealership happens to be renting the space, but that's not a car dealership there.
Yeah, I don't see a conflict.
It just gives them more inventory. If you wanted a Corolla with a sunroof, and they got one there, they're going to drive it to the lot. Here it is, and-
Would there be any limit to inventory storage so it wouldn't look like Southern Auto?
Well, we'd probably need to put some sort of a limit.
There were trucks over there,
You know,
too,
Not-
because I went through the back, too. So a bunch of
Want to see a sea.
Vehicles are vehicles.
I know.
Actually, we would
If it
want to
was a
see a
mall,
sea
you
of
would.
cars, right?
people at the mall.
Yeah.
I went through there once, and there are
But if you're
trailer
looking at this-
boxes there, too. The trailer boxes on the parked out back, 4 or 5 of them.
Are they for the Target remodel?
I don't know what they were.
Yeah,
if you're
because
looking-
Target's got a
Quite a
bunch of
while
them on the
back.
ground now.
Well, they were over, and they were on the front.
If you're looking
These
at
are
this,
parked out back in among the cars.
You can buy a car from Costco too, though.
Yeah, you
Is
can.
that legal or illegal?
all right, so for now, let's just say that staff's going to investigate some possible ways that we can allow it, that will
Yeah.
make it legal.
I just have one, I guess, comment, which is if you're looking at it as a private transaction between the car dealership and the mall, and our job is just, or your job is just to say whether that I guess the comments were made about, can you put a limit on how many cars are there? Well, when a normal tenant is a tenant in the mall, do we ask the tenant how much parking they have? If the answer to that is yes, then yes, I think we can inquire how many cars there are. If the answer to that is no, I don't think we can
There's a
inquire.
formula with that.
Right.
So
And so that-
typically,
and-
the parking at any mall is based on the store gross floor area or something like that. So there's X number of parking spaces allocated per tenant space, theoretically. I think there's probably way more out there than
We've
we would
maneuvered
ever
the
use.
parking out there to a
Sears,
couple of
Macy's,
times to
JCPenney.
allow certain stores in, because I think certain cars take less space.
Yeah.
And we've done that a couple of times for the mall. So,
And this is just new cars, correct?
I don't know.
No,
The only reason
it
I
may
ask
be-
is because it's all wetlands, so you would want just new cars, right?
Well, it's a parking lot, whether they're new cars owned by a dealer or owned by a private citizen. They're all going to park there.
Along with what Sarah just said, wouldn't this self-regulate itself as they re-rent Macy's?
Yeah, if they
The
do,
usage of the parking lot has to be appropriate for the square footage
right,
that they
they do,
leased.
that's
So
right.
you're automatically going to have to bounce those cars out because
That's
we're going
right.
to see the parking lot. So she's right.
Right.
It's going to self-control itself.
Except that, as Lori said, it's not an acceptable use, so she's got to find
She already
language.
took care of that.
She did?
She said she's going to do it as
Inventory
Inventory
holding.
holding.
yeah.
Yeah, as
Okay.
long as it
So,
doesn't
well,
look like Southern Auto.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah, we don't.
it's going to look like a parking lot.
Well,
I know,
yeah, but
we
that's
could
just
end up
it.
with,
We have how many
Southern
car
Auto with
dealerships in this
taking
town?
up all of the property along Route 5, which is a nice to have.
So we will do some investigation as to whether we could do this legally and feasibly.
Yes.
And
Try to pick their brain for what they have.
yeah, I'm going to
planned
talk to them
store
directly.
For
Well,
the
that's-
whole place.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. They should be
And, you know-
working on something.
And you know, we don't want them parking over by Panera and the Target parking lot because that's where there actually is business going on.
Also
So,
don't want them parking on
you know,
the
things
grass.
like
Well, they
that.
should know that we were looking about building apartments above, or if they wanted to go into that type of thing. And
I
also
don't know that.
outbuildings, because they've got plenty. In fact, it was mentioned once that the old Sears building, the one by itself, a restaurant. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do with the property.
I'm sure that they have a lot of plans. I have not had the conversation with them personally. So, and I believe that there's been some potential sales of part of the mall. So I'll have to look into that part as well. But
Okay.
we'll see if we could fix it so they could legally park there until such time as the mall is redeveloped. How's that?
All right, you have to. Everybody happy?
Yep.
Okay. Can I get general statutes? And you have those on here, and from what I understand,
These are the ones in your packet.
They had statutes in your pocket right here.
Yep, no, I got them right here.
What are these gentlemen in here for? I don't know what's a package store.
I don't know, I have any idea.
Lori?
What is it you want? Yes.
Yes, sir. I'm here for the complaint for the package store. My name is Satish Panchal.
I'm sorry, you're not on the agenda. What?
I think he missed the public participation.
Yeah, he came in after that.
Oh,
Maybe you can make an
I got
exception.
the time 7 o'clock, so we came 7 o'clock.
He was here at 7, but
He
he
walked
didn't
in
come up
just
on
as-
public.
He walked in just after Charlie had said that.
Talk to the Raquel, her name.
oh, somebody want to make a motion? Then
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we reopen.
Well, you allow him to speak, and then I'll take
Well,
care of it.
again, I guess, so
I don't know what he's here for.
for public participation, we reopen, I guess, item number 6, public participation, to allow the public to speak during our meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right, sir. Name and address, please.
Have a seat.
Have a seat.
And the microphone is there.
The gentleman on the gentleman's left.
We need your name
We need
and
your
your
name and address,
address.
sir.
My name is Satish Panchal.
Your
My
address.
address is 80 Hazard Avenue. I have package store there.
All right.
And another package store is coming right now, another one. I can walk 2 minutes over there, only 2 minutes. And I walk this way another 2 minutes, Stop and Stop Plaza. And already business going down. Property tax goes up. Light bill goes up. Profit goes down. And we right now not making even enough money. We surviving for the business. Everybody 10 to 12% business down this already this year. And this is store too close. I can see their store from my store. That easy. They saying no, if you go that way, then come this around is 1500. That's agree. But if you come from Big Y to my store, not even 600 feet. My store, I have to cross only 190 main road. cross.
What's the problem then, basically? The package stores, the
They
two
wanna open
closest?
another package
No,
store
there,
by Big
we
Y.
approved one in the Big Y Plaza, on the other side of Big Y, and that's what he's complaining about.
And
is
I
there's
went
too
to the
many in
state
the
office
area.
liquor department. They said you should go down and explain them. If you want to explain here, we want to approve the permit because it's open over there.
But doesn't the state only issue so many liquor permits per
They do.
town
This
anyway?
town-
So,
Sir,
There was one left as far as we were
already
told.
we have 17 store. Already, and this 190 already 6 store.
Yeah, there are. There's a lot along 190.
right, but what's the limit the state allows in the town?
Last I
Well, they
heard, we had
supposedly
one or
measured,
two.
now, is he the jug shop?
26, I think.
He's right on the corner of Middle Road and Hazard Ave.
Right, that's the jug shop.
Less than 4 minutes, 3 stores, sir. Less than 3 minutes, you can walk 4 minutes. you
Because
get
we
3 stores.
asked that at the time, and we were told that the distance was legal.
I think what he's saying is that the distance we were provided is if you walk out to the outside of the parking lot and go around the parking lot. But if you go directly from where the new store is opening up or the one that we
My store,
permitted to
yeah.
his store, it's a lot less.
But-
So
Bird, the bird. the-
well,
Don't
well, no,
we-
no, even, well, yes, definitely as,
The
the,
bird
as
flies.
but there is a, there is, you're not going through bushes or anything, it's just,
But as
you
I
know, going to the
recall, when we
street.
did it, they did do it
Don't we,
straight.
don't we just regulate distance to schools and churches, not
No.
package
No,
store
we
to
do
package
both.
store?
We
We
do
do?
package,
We do
yeah.
All
Oh,
package store is, but
Yeah,
it's
that's
from- it's
like
from, it's from
daycare center.
it's from the front door to front door. And we were told that it was legal at that time, the distance. It
Yeah.
wasn't going around corners or anything.
I know, he's claiming that that's, the distance we were provided is not accurate, that's his claim, that we
Yes,
were
if you go
provided.
this way, all the way straight on the Palomba Drive, and you coming signal light to my throw, is gonna be exactly 1500, no problem there. But if you going my store to pass 190, right there, Big Y,
As the crow
right there,
flies.
another new store.
Well, that's the way they take it. Yeah, they measure.
So if you were to drive in Big Y's Plaza from that package store, go straight to 190, you're forced to take a right-hand turn. His store is right there. He's saying that straight distance, because it is paved,
Yeah, and drivable.
shorter.
It's too short. And another store, right there, Stop and Stop Plaza. So, and only 4 minutes, have 3 store.
Is he going straight across though from the Stop and Shop?
Right.
Yeah,
Have a
almost
drive-
Big Y.
Here's Big Y.
Yeah,
All right, here's that plaza.
Walk
Right.
in front of the
Package
store.
stores here.
You're directly.
See,
Big
that
Y
guy has
is
to
here.
close the store, so he left.
Here's the parking
What's that?
lot.
That guy, he owns Harry Discount
And then
in Stop and Shop Plaza.
it is over
So he has to
here.
leave to
on the
close.
corner, right.
Right.
Because
So
we used to
technically,
keep employee, we're not affording any
this
more employee
address
now.
is Palumbo.
So he's with you?
No, he's separate,
No,
but he was complaining
we
too.
did it.
We
Oh,
all
right.
talked.
So he's with you
Yeah,
on
he's
the
complaining
complaint.
too.
Complaint
Yes.
department. Another 2 people, they have kids concert and everything, so they didn't come. But they said if they need the signature on the people,
But they gave us a measurement from
They will
the street
all sign.
across because we asked. It's from front door to front door, not a-
Unfortunately, the application was approved.
No, I know,
Right,
I understand
and
that.
there was an appeal period,
But they can't cut.
and that's the time that you
No,
needed.
that's,
you
that's
can't
the
come in this
location
door.
was all the way next to the Goodwill.
Yeah.
The
No,
last
Right.
I understand that.
1,000 square feet building.
But the the application's been approved, and the public has a right to appeal that decision within 30 days, and that time frame is
Yeah, you
passed,
can
so
make a
we
left
can't.
and go up Middle
I mean,
Road.
it looks to me that we did the measurement based on
No,
what
no,
the requirements
I
were.
agree with that. I didn't say that, no. I
No,
didn't
I'm-
say- because you guys have measurement, I explained already, this way. Coming this way and going this way. If you do survey, my store here, this is 190 and this is the store. You guys doing your ways.
Because
Door to
you
door,
can't- you
go
can't-
straight on
it's from
Palomba Drive,
doorway
come on the
to
signal light,
doorway,
and
so
go
they
this
would
way.
have had to
If
open
you
it
look
that way.
from properly here to here,
So what is your proposal? What is,
he can move somewhere.
well, but he's been approved.
That's
And the
because
appeal period
already
has
it is
ended.
going down, we surviving.
I
not
feel,
even
I
open.
understand what you're saying, and I
We
wasn't
working-
here. And I just wanted, but I'm just explaining what the process is.
No, I went to the state office, that's why I said, liquor department commissioner, I talked to him.
So if the state doesn't want to give them a license, they
They
have,
said, no, talk to the town. We have permit to open, so we're gonna approve that.
But Laurie, I believe when they measured, and he may be right, you have to go from front door to front door.
correct.
And there,
And that's what, we've got the diagram online right now, and that's what they did. They didn't go through the back door and around, because that's not how you measure it.
The front door, their front door is right in the drive of the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
So if you walk out the front door, get in your car and drive from that front door straight along the front of Big Y to Hazard Avenue, you have to take the right there.
Yep.
His store is right across the
yeah,
street.
but you can't go across the
looking at
street. You'd
We
have
have-
to
we
go
have that
across, you'd have to go across 3 lanes.
Right.
Because when you come out,
I understand that, but it's still from door to door, like you're
Straight
saying.
line.
What is, she's saying she has the distance.
That, I'm looking at what the staff presented to the commission.
Yep,
Yeah.
it says 1,265 feet.
that's right.
So they did give us that distance, and it meets. They didn't give us going around, they gave us the direct shot,
Well,
door
you-
to door. That's what they're saying, Charlie.
I know, I said.
Right, so I understand your concerns, but they did follow the letter of the law, and it's not going around like you're trying to make it out to be. It's going straight in front of Big Y towards your store. It's farther than you think. Do I understand your concerns?
I understand.
Absolutely, but we're held to the law, and they met the letter of the law, so
Because already is 2 store and this is third one less than 5-minute distance.
I would say challenge the state on how many permits they're allowing in.
Still is
each
2
town.
permit available in this town.
There's
That
what?
I can say, yes.
Well, there's different, right, there's different
Liquor licenses.
licenses too. And I don't know which license this is because initially we had it was like a wine dealer going in there and I don't know if they ever went in. Do you remember? I don't know.
I believe these are all 3 liquor stores. It's not like selling liquor out of the Stop and Shop or something like that. These are all liquor stores, not a restaurant, not a grocer.
May I, sorry, may I ask another question?
Yeah.
How did you come up with the measurements you stated at the beginning, that, it was 600 door to door? How did you come up with
No,
that?
one of my customers said, he's doing construction work. He said it's not that far distance,
So-
maybe 600-700 feet from here.
So it's just a visual estimate, there wasn't
Yes,
any?
I didn't,
Okay.
as I got from the construction guy. He said, yes, we can see the store from here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, yeah,
what you
yeah,
could
you
do,
can.
sir, is measure,
GIS, point to
exactly.
point, and it'll pull up that measurement for you, clear as day.
Just did.
Didn't-
That's why that store owner came too,
Right.
because right now business going down everywhere.
I understand nobody likes competition, but.
No,
We don't we can't use our personal opinion.
No, no.
Follow the law, and that's why I'm saying the
But-
state of Connecticut set the rules and the permits. I would talk to them and say, look, we're not making it, you need to cut it back. I remember when Costco came, didn't they have to buy
Yep.
out a package store just to get the license?
Yeah, how many stores we should count now
Well,
in that
yeah,
particular
right.
5 minute radius?
But they also,
the state-
I don't think
the sta-
Costco could run it.
Yeah. The state issues liquor licenses based on population.
Right.
So it's up to
No,
them
I-
how
I
many
know
liquor
that,
licenses they
but at
issue.
least they have
And-
to go distance little
Right,
more.
if the applicant met the distance, which they apparently
No,
did,
yes,
then
I-
we have every right to give it to them.
But they have to give us distance at least 2,500 feet, not 1,000 feet.
Right, they have to
They're killing
change it.
business.
Right, you're asking them to
And
change
then
it.
it takes right away. If I don't have money, I'm going to be bankrupt right away.
And
Rent going
I'm
up, property
sorry
tax
for
down
that.
go up, sewer bill goes up.
But I think a
but-
lot of it too is the drunk driving laws. Let's face it, Enfield is very tough on drunk driving,
I know.
which I support 100%.
I support
They're
too.
doing a great
If you call
job.
town of police,
Yeah.
they will say, and judge shop helping me every way.
Yeah,
I give videos and everything from my camera system.
yeah. No,
Whenever they
you're
have
definitely
problem,
a good business
I
owner,
help.
but this store isn't even open yet.
No,
So
yeah,
how
that's-
it can't be affecting your sales. So I understand this is going to make it worse, but this hasn't contributed anything to the decline. I think the laws, everybody's afraid to get pulled over for a DWI now, and I think alcohol is dropping down, and hopefully it does.
Taxes,
Sorry,
too.
I know that's your
It's the
business.
taxes on
but-
alcohol that are...
Everybody has to pay on time. If I'm not paying on time, they charge late fee, penalty,
That's right.
right? Because right now is tough market economic, is not that well.
Yeah.
I think
Go
the,
to the state.
the situation is that we all understand your plight. Like, if we can call it that, we all understand it. But legally, there is nothing that this board can do legally, because they do meet the legal requirements.
If I can go to the main court. We can all sign people and we can fight for that.
But you're going to fight the state.
Yeah, we
You're
can
not
fight.
right. You're not fighting us.
Yeah.
So-
We're doing what the state
So
tells
my
us we
suggestion
have
is,
to
can
do.
you hold for one more month?
No, we already passed it.
So we can go to the state office and we can start fighting.
Well, you can do that now, but if we were to hold him up, we're going to end up in court
No.
being sued. And we're not willing to do that. We're going to
Because
follow
all
the law.
6 store owners is ready to go up level.
It's your prerogative.
Yeah. So this application was approved in May, and the state allows a 30-day appeal period. So that has long since passed. Beyond that, we have to issue the permit. If they meet all of the conditions of approval, we must issue it. So if you really have a concern at this point, you really do need to work with the state. Unfortunately, and again, I agree with all of them. We really understand your plight, and this is competition, and that's part of the American way. Is everybody's allowed to have a store or a business or whatever, but we also have to meet the statutes, and we have done that, and so therefore we can't just take it away because you're concerned.
I can bring thousand of sign from the town people.
But where are you going to bring it? We won't have any jurisdiction to undo it. That's the problem.
Even I can bring the sign from the police department.
Bring
Okay.
it to the state.
Bring it to the state.
The state tells us what we have to follow. We didn't make, so many liquor permits or the distance. We had nothing to do with that. The state of Connecticut says, these are the rules for a liquor license. This is what we have to follow to say yes or no, you can have a license. And he met it. So we said yes, we have no choice.
We also had a public hearing, which
Right.
you should have been at.
Absolutely. But you still, even if you were here, we're still bound by what the state tells us we
Right.
can and can't do. It's not an opinion up here. You're a great guy. You have a great store. I know it well. But it doesn't matter. We can't change it. You need to appeal the state, like Sunday liquor sales. Certain people were for it. Certain people were against it. But
We're
it was
against
at,
it, yep.
But it was at the state level, and they pushed it through. Liquor store owners, just like yourself,
We don't
Donnie
like
Limo.
Sunday. Sunday is a holiday.
Well, you don't like it, but many did, and it got pushed through. That's what I'm saying. But that's all done at the state level.
If you come to my store, you will see 7 days from me because we're not making money right now.
Yeah.
7 days.
So perhaps you could talk to your state legislator.
Yeah.
That-
They're all
that-
running for
that's-
election right
yep,
now.
Now's a
Call 'em
good
right
time
now,
to call.
The state reps, John Kissel,
Yeah.
all of them. And they're the ones who are going to be able to help you and change the law at the state level.
No, I never got the help. I need one help from the town. They saying call town, they saying call state. I need one lights, no turn on red. They're not doing since last 7 years.
Well, that's the state of Connecticut for you.
Now state saying talk to the town.
It's a state highway. We
I
can't do
know.
it.
No, but that light goes to the middle road.
Yeah.
So there's a town, they say.
Well, they probably want a report from this town police.
Okay.
And I talk to the police officer, they comes. If you sit there, you will get every day 500 tickets, at least 500 tickets for that, no rates, no turn on red. Because what they do, they boom, they use my parking lot. And
Oh,
cops
they
seen
cut
that
through
all
this
the
parking
times.
lot, they do that.
And they sitting on the mobile gas station, they knows very well. They say,
did
talk
through
to
the
the
gas
town.
station here, too.
I say, already I talked to, and Mr. Ernie, the last time I forgot that.
Arnone?
Yeah, Arnone.
Tom Arnone?
He knows this very well.
Yeah.
ask him, he will say.
That's what I mean. He's running too. So
Yeah, he's running.
call
I
him,
see his sign.
right, call him and talk to him. If he wins, this is something he can start with. But those are the people you have to talk to. I mean, they make the laws, we uphold them. That's it. It's like a police officer. Don't argue with him about a ticket.
No,
argue with the state
I'm not
about the speeding
arguing.
limit. Yeah, no, I
That's
understand.
I'm saying that if they approve that.
Sir, but if we can move on, I hate to cut you off, but we do have others. Basically, there's nothing we can do about it. The distance was legal.
Okay.
And
I have to go with the.
You had two chances. One when we had the hearing, and then 15 days after.
30 days.
I'm sorry, 30 days. I thought it was, okay. It's 15. 15 days to appeal. Somebody, why is 30? I don't know. It's 15 days to appeal. And both those days, that's gone. And as it's been told to you several times, it's the state the laws that we follow, the distance laws and the number of permits that we're allowed to give out. And we check every time whether or not there is still a permit out.
Yeah, still one permit available in town. I can say that.
So,
Still one more is there available.
thank you for your input, but as a lot of them have said, talk to your state reps that are running for office and see what they can do for you.
We will do it tomorrow morning. I will do it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
You know where they'll all be Tuesday morning. At the polling places.
I'm not going to answer the phone. I can't say that right now.
Have a good night. Yeah, especially you had it, so. Okay, back on track.
General statutes, which we were on. I guess Lori is back in your lap.
So when we went to the Casio training, we were reviewing some state statutes, and I wanted to highlight some other points in Section 8-2 for regulations that's interrelated with the River Gateway that we're doing. And the first is the promotion of housing choices and economic diversity. So when you're looking at the state statute, Section 8-2, the regulations, it states to promote housing choices and economic diversity in housing, including housing for both low and moderate income households, and shall encourage the development of housing which will meet the housing needs identified in the state's consolidated plan of housing and community development and pursuant to Section 8-37T. So with the promotion of housing choices and economic diversity, Thompsonville, we're trying to revive it, rebrand it, refresh it. So with that, I just wanted to make that clear that, we are looking to support up-and-coming young professionals and bringing them towards the Thompsonville with the transit-oriented development. The next point was the energy efficiency development and low-impact development. And in the statute, it says, encourage energy-efficient patterns for development, the use of solar and other renewable forms of energy and energy conservation, and the regulation may also provide for incentives for developers who use passive solar energy techniques. And the incentives may include, but not limited to, cluster development, higher density development, and performance standards for roads, sidewalks, and underground facilities in the subdivision. So with the energy efficiency and low impact development, I think that's a great opportunity for Thompsonville to take advantage of sustainable practices so that we can get those implemented in Thompsonville, because at the end of the day, in terms of sustainability, you have the planet, you have the people, and you have the profits. It's the triple bottom line in business, and if we can incorporate these sustainable practices within the development, it's going to be for the betterment of the community. And we're going to be we're already considering higher density, so we're already going to have that type of incentive. So why not become friendlier for the social equity of the neighborhoods as well as the environment. And then finally, it's the family and group daycare facility, home daycare. And I also wrote C-Section 8-3E. But basically, it just says here that no regulation shall prohibit the operation of any family child care home or child care home in residential zone. So for that specifically, when we're looking at the state statutes, you can't treat these home daycares or these community residents for people with intellectual disabilities any different than a single-family home. If they have 6 or less fewer people, that's how we should be treating them. It goes on to more specifics. The print here is kind of small to see, but basically any residents with 6 or fewer persons receiving mental health or addiction services, for instance, and they're paid by the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and licensed by the Department of Public Health, shall be treated as a single-family home. So we need to have our regulations match up to what the state statutes are. So I just wanted to point that out because there isn't a consistency, and we need to adhere and be equitable to everyone.
I just have one question. I agree about the definition of a single-family residence. Are you also proposing that we alter the regulations to discuss the promote housing choice and sustainable development, or is that just sort of a overall goal that we hope is?
I would say
alter
alter it because we're right now in the middle of it, and if we can have, and we could propose it. We're still in discussion, so that we can, be more in compliance with what the statute has. It would behoove us as a community to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. With regard to the family child care home or group child care home in a residential zone, now that includes like a daycare?
Yes.
I know we've had some stuff before us where we have had, we considered safety. And so are we allowed to consider those safety regulations and whether that's a positive, or is this saying basically we can't?
Because if that's the case.
Well, according to 8-3E, regulations of community residence for persons with intellectual disability, child care residential facilities, community residence for persons receiving mental health or addiction services, and hospice facility, no zoning regulation shall treat the following in any manner different from any single-family residence. And it just is basically those, the ones that were in the title. So we can't treat it any different if it's 6 or fewer people.
Didn't you say paid for by the state, though?
Well, depending upon what it is, it goes on to it. So it says any community residence that houses 6 or fewer people with intellectual disability and necessary staff persons that is licensed under the provisions of Section 17A 227, parentheses 2, any child care residential facility that houses 6 or fewer children with mental or physical disabilities and necessary staff person that is licensed under the section.
See, it's that license you got to watch, and they're disabled.
But that's for residences there. It's not for a child care business.
Exactly.
So if you have a group home, you have to treat it like a single-family residence. But if you have someone desiring to operate a daily, transient child care center, there's nothing that says we must accept every single child care center that is proposed to be operated as a business within an existing single-family residence, if that's consistent.
So they have to live.
And also, if they're a group home, they have to have, with disabilities, they have to have ADA ramps and that. So you can't put them in a basement with no access to get out. So,
And most of the group homes, 6 and under, we don't see.
Yeah, you don't see applications for a group home because it's treated like a single-family residence.
Okay, good. Because I'm like going, wait a second.
Oh, I was going to say, that would have the whole town up.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm going to talk about the next highlighted section. And it says that such regulation shall not prohibit the continuance of any non-conforming use, building, or structure existing at the time of adoption of such regulations. And such regulation shall not provide for the termination of any non-conforming use solely as a result of non-use for a specified period of time without regard to the intent of the property owner to maintain that use. So basically what that is saying is that non-conforming uses cannot be, you can't put a timeline on them. If it was not deliberately abandoned, you could always go back to that non-conforming use. And what I handed out this evening is another yellow highlighted sheet. So this is coming up with a property in Thompsonville where the structure has burnt down, and they'd like to rebuild it as it was, but it burnt down many years ago. So we had the attorneys look at it, and the question was, can a non-conforming structure be rebuilt after our 12 or 24-month, is it 12? Somebody said it was 20, it had been changed to 24 at one time.
The state changed it.
Oh, the state changed it. But the state doesn't have any time period. But anyway, so 12 months. So the attorney's opinion is that our regulation does contradict the protection of Connecticut General Statutes 8-2A, which we were just reading, which prohibits zoning regulations from terminating a non-conforming use solely for non-use for a specified period of time without regard to the intent of the owner to maintain a use. So we're looking to the commission to make a determination whether you agree with that finding. Shall we, in the future, have people seek a variance of this, or do we just assume that we are not abiding by the statute?
Well, the only thing that I see is, as long as it's not abandoned, in terms of, as long as there is some intent to improve it, that, the owner should be able to improve whatever he has,
well,
he owns, and even if it's conforming or non-conforming.
Right.
But if it's abandoned, then I think that ultimately somewhere we should be able to, remove abandoned buildings so that they don't become blight at a future time.
The particular property, the owner took the insurance check and darted, and that's why the property was left. It went through foreclosure, new owner bought it, new owner wants to rebuild it, and the town's refusing him, like all the barns that collapsed in the snowstorm. What she's saying, and I agree, because I didn't agree with that to begin with, all those farms can put their barns back up now. We can't stop them from, it collapsed. The house burnt. It took 3-4 years for the foreclosure, sales, and all that to happen, and that's what I said when those people were complaining about the Thompsonville thing. It takes years to get through the whole process. And if they're non-conforming, they could lose their property because of paperwork. And that's what happened on this particular property in Thompsonville. And the gentleman just wants to put it back. And that's why it's sitting burnt, ugly, and dangerous, because of a regulation that holds no weight.
Right.
And I agree with that in terms of, if it holds no weight, we should not have that kind of a regulation. So that, but if it's truly abandoned, where
well, yeah, if it's falling down and
right, in terms of then all of a sudden, obviously if there was some monies that were still owned on it, so that the bank took it over as foreclosure, then it's not really abandoned. But if it is totally abandoned and nobody's looking at it and it has no ownership and nobody has a clue as to who's involved, then I think that's when we should.
Well, the town would take it for back taxes.
I think that the tough part about this is that the state statute says you can't prohibit a non-conform or reestablishment of a non-conforming use if you do it without regard to the intent. And I think if you read our regulations fairly, you would say, well, the intent to reestablish the use can be evidenced by trying to rebuild within 12 months. So I agree that we're not necessarily in conflict. We may be in conflict with respect to this particular case. So I'm not sure necessarily we need to change our regulations. I think those are arguably within the scope of the statute, but the question is, do we want to change them anyway to more effectuate that statute? I don't know the answer to that.
I would think within the time, 12 months, the intent would be seen if you see some kind of an action by the individual.
Well, then
no,
you have them
property.
just hammer a stake in the ground, and that's
took
a
them
change.
6 months to get paid from the insurance company.
Okay.
And the bank doesn't start a foreclosure for a year.
Right,
so now you're 16 months into this, or 18 months into this, and then the foreclosure takes a year and a half, 2 years, And here this gentleman is, I got a great deal on a house. Town says, you can't build it.
This is just for fire.
Well, this is actually not what you're talking about.
This is just fire.
And I'm going to explain it to you because you're going to see this as an 824 referral probably in the next month. This is 32 Church Street.
Yep.
And
Every day.
it's got 3 structures on the site. They're all rental properties. The main building, which is 2 3/4 stories, and a historic structure built in the 1920s, has been burnt. It's burnt to the point of non-repair. There is somebody that, the town owns it right now, there's somebody that would like to purchase this property and rebuild it in kind, rebuild back to the historic quality of that structure. Well, it burnt down about 3 or 4 years ago.
This is the property. The previous owner took the
Oh, okay.
insurance check.
Okay, I don't know any of
and
that
darted it,
backstory.
And then,
So here's a situation where if we
Yeah, I know the
enforce
town
this,
took it. Right, so
this
it did
gentleman's
what
not going to be able to build it, rebuild the way that he would like to.
So how do we measure intent? That's the question. When you say it's for a person to rebuild
the intent
it.
is there now, but it's years later, so it's after 12 months.
Not from the current owner, because the owner at the time
Yes.
had no intent to rebuild and
Right.
ran off.
Yep.
There is also a public act on this that says that regulations shall not terminate or deem abandoned a nonconforming use, building, or structure unless the property owner of such use, building, or structure voluntarily discontinues such use, building, or structure. And
But
such
this-
discontinuance is accompanied by an intent to not reestablish that use, building, or structure.
But then 8.3 specifically talks about fire, so I agree, that one I think is more geared towards if you have a factory.
No, it goes on. It says the demolition or deconstruction of a nonconforming use, building, or structure shall not itself be evidence of such property owner's intent not to reestablish the use, building, or structure.
But isn't this the case of a damaged or destroyed by fire?
This is any of all the above. I
Yeah.
mean, whether it's partially destroyed, whether, the tree falls on it, whatever the case may be. The point is that we have a time limit on it. Just about every town in Connecticut has a time limit on it. The point is that none of us should. So what we would like to do is just assume that we're just going to ignore that for now until we can change it.
But I guess the question becomes, how do we avoid blight if we don't try to make the owner have a timetable on when he starts rebuilding?
So,
Otherwise,
because
you can
we
just...
have a clean and lean ordinance, we have a blight ordinance, we have 2 code enforcement officers that are dealing specifically with blight itself, and that's all they do. We're about to perhaps hire another one, and we also have
as long as
zoning
there's some
enforcement
teeth to it,
officer.
but it's difficult to enforce something that really doesn't have any teeth, or where that you can create a fine for somebody, and the fine gets up to $20,000, and the house is only worth $15,000, so all of a sudden nobody's going to spend $20,000 for fines, and the house is only worth $15,000. They walk away, the town takes it over, and then the town sells it to somebody, and we're sort of just going around in a circle all the time.
But the town is the town owns that property, so how come the town didn't tear it down?
We were in the process of it when somebody came to us and
Right,
said,
but I
I'd
mean,
like to purchase it
just
and redo
took
it.
this long to make it happen. It's happening, but it takes forever to
Isn't
do
it this something for ZBA, though? They could waive the 12 months.
They can do a variance, right?
Well, they could, but why put somebody through that?
Exactly. I understand what you're
I
saying,
mean,
but I think we have to.
Why do you want them to go through one other step so they can rebuild something?
Isn't town go through it?
But the town...
But why do you want anybody to go through it? It's one more step towards reconstruction of something that was a perfectly fine building. It just happens to be over a year since the damage.
But forget the town. What about everybody else? The farmers who's had their barns that are still laying on the ground from that storm because this town refused to allow them to be rebuilt. I never agreed with it then. I don't agree with it now.
I wouldn't
She's
either.
saying they can rebuild them, and they should be able to rebuild them.
The question is that we also have to cover ourselves as well, because it's important that we have regulations there and we have to follow them to a specific point to, in essence, cover the commission, cover the town as well, from legal issues
But if
that
the
could
state
occur.
overrides us,
Right.
She just said the state has.
Well, but even our town attorney says the best way to go is ZBA for a variance.
It is.
So, and that's what
And
I'm
she
trying to
does.
say to you, is that we have to be careful, because we can pretend something's not there. We can just kind of go over it and say, oh, the state said this, because that's our interpretation. But to protect ourselves, we might have to do that variance piece.
But
I don't
Why
know.
would you send them for a variance if they can't say no?
Yeah,
Why
what
would
if they
you even
said
send
no?
them? If they, if
Because then you make it
ZBA
legal.
can't say no.
Yeah, you make it
What's
legal,
the
yeah.
point?
You make it legal.
Yeah.
Then why not just do that?
It is legal without them going to ZBA.
But if the state says 2 years, correct?
I don't.
The line under it.
That's. Where did you get
Does
the
the state say
24
2 years
About
for
how
building,
you call it
rebuilding?
abandoned. No, it's a matter of who
And-
abandoned it.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's what I'm trying to, yeah,
think it's state.
for the 2 years.
It comes to a vote, I'm going to say no.
Well, go ahead.
I mean, personally, I don't want to put anybody through any more stuff either, but I feel we also have to protect, we have an opinion from our town attorney, so that's
So
important.
The thing is at what point when people keep going back to the ZBA and saying, well, I want to rebuild this thing, and it's been more than 12 months, and they get 10 applications, at that point, planners look at that and say, wait a second, why are we getting so many applications for the same thing to the ZBA? That means we need to change our zoning regulations.
Yes.
Right?
But I guess the
Because
question
there's
is.
too many variances for the same thing. That means something's wrong in the code.
Yes, but do we have all those variances for that same thing?
No,
Has that
we
occurred?
don't.
So I
But
think until
apparently-
we did when all the barns fell.
So we need to
we
figure
never
out.
heard
got
about
denied.
those.
I didn't,
They all got
wasn't
denied.
here, so
Yeah.
I
If
wasn't
they were
here.
over 12 months, can't build them. Drive down Broadbrook Road, you'll see them all down on the ground still.
We were never notified of that.
Well, because they went to the town for the permits, and it says right in the regulations, 12 months, that's it.
So-
That's why when Thompsonville was here, and I argued with Ginny, it is 12 months, you cannot rebuild on a non-conforming, and you guys kept saying, well, they're grandfathered. No, they're not. With our regulations,
never
grandfather
said
ends
here.
at 12 months. She makes total sense with this, that once you're in, you're grandfathered, you're grandfathered. You can't put a timeline on it. Unless the owner tears it down, bulldozes it, and says, I want to take it from this use and make it this use with their consent, then it can happen. But we cannot force them, and that's what we've been doing.
Hold on one second. So just to be a little bit clear about the statute says you can't cause cessation of a use, of a non-conforming use, merely because they've stopped using it, because you have to consider the intent. Now, 3.40.5 of our regulations mirrors that exact language, and it says, a non-conforming use shall be considered abandoned when there's an actual cessation coupled with the intent not to put the premises again to the same use. Now, the portion that talks about the time limit has only to do with fire. So when we're saying we're not in conformance, we have this 8.2 language.
It says fire ... So in other words,
Well, if the fire
That's
was
for,
the case...
that's for non-conforming structures.
Right.
And it says, that's damaged or destroyed by fire, explosion, natural disaster, may be reconstructed, repaired, and rebuilt only to its previous floor area. So that has to do with the structure. The other issue is the use. So this use says the use itself is not going to be discontinued. The use itself will remain because you do have to look at the intent. The next question is, what does the structure look like? And then you have to ask, can you build the structure to its exact same floor area if it's been damaged, destroyed by fire? And then there's that time limit on it. So I don't necessarily, I think there are times when there could be a conflict. But I don't think our regulations as written are in conflict because we do provide the use is not extinguished because we do provide that the intent does control here. So then the issue is the structure. And that's where the potential conflict is. And I think that the issue is reasonably, if we want to rewrite it, which I don't know, but if we want to, doing it in a measured way, not in reaction to this one thing right now. That's my only point.
So tomorrow, when somebody comes in for a permit to rebuild that structure, what am I going to tell them?
I was just wondering if there are 3 residential structures on this property, one burned, the other 2 have been occupied, then hasn't there been an intent to have it continue to be residential? The property?
Yeah.
Not the building?
Yes.
Right, so the use will be there. The question is, what does the structure look like?
The structure is non-conforming to setback and size, and, I mean, there's 3 structures on a tiny little lot.
Right.
But they were built in 1920.
Are we going to disregard what the opinion of our town attorney is?
That's what I'm saying.
For one?
That's what I'm saying.
And so I read the intent of the fire provision to say, all right, if you've got something that's burned down, do you want it to linger in a burned down state for 5 years and then have someone come back? Or do you just want to say, look, rather raise it and then start over? So I don't know if...
Right, and that's what they'd like to do, is raise it.
Sure.
And start over, but he'd like to rebuild it to the historic quality.
I think the
in
variance
character.
recommendation is one that keeps intact sort of that regime for requiring a quick action when you have a fire or damage. I understand in practice, you're waiting for your insurance check. Maybe they're not going to give it to you. You have to sue them. It takes a long time. You don't have the money to finance it right now. That's a tough one. But we have to think about each and every scenario before we make a rash decision.
And
Can
perhaps,
ZBA legally reject them?
Yep.
perhaps we should find out what other towns are doing.
I don't
You
see
know,
how
do
they
they
could.
do?
Well,
Do
If
they
they
have
don't find
24?
a hardship,
The town attorney's opinion right here says,
Yes.
a building or underneath the highlight, the last highlight in item 4. A building or structure may only be deemed abandoned if the owner voluntarily discontinues the structure, and such discontinuance is evidenced by an intent not to reestablish the building or structure. That's the owner when the thing happened.
And by the way, the town attorney on the last page, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to that. And we have not presented with any information or facts evidencing that either the previous owners or the current owners intent not to reestablish the building. However, rather than challenging the enforceability of zoning regulation 3.40.2C and potentially creating delays in the conveyance of this property, the town may wish to consider having Mr. Fiore, who apparently is the one who wants to buy it, file an application for a variance from the 1-year limit.
But see,
That's the town attorney's opinion.
right.
And then cites
So
a
the
ca-
town attorney's opinion is saying you can challenge it, but on this particular one, let's just push it through. Like she said, let's not change the regulation over this particular one.
Right.
But he's saying the same thing. Nobody voluntarily turned over the non-conforming
The
use.
owner did by bolting and not paying the taxes on it.
Hold on.
No, but he didn't give up the use, or
they didn't
the,
give up the
The-
purpose of the structure.
Right, the
that's
use
right.
is
You
there,
The
the
new
structure
owner
is the
hasn't
issue.
Gave up all
That's
rights
right.
to the property.
Hold on.
he gave the rights up. He didn't give up the non-conforming use. The town of Enfield still holds it as a residential
Otherwise, yeah.
non-conforming.
Otherwise,
The
they
use
would've-
is there.
They're trying to sell it that way.
So, just one last thing, and Charlie, the last part of the memo cites a case in which the zoning board of appeals was justified in giving a variance from the rebuilding time. So, yes, there's a possibility that a ZBA might say no, but what this memorandum says is the ZBA would be totally justified, at least pursuant to this court case, in granting such a variance.
That's not what I said, though. What I said is, what if they say no? Can they legally say no and not be sued? Not according to what she's reading.
Well,
Nobody voluntarily gave up the use of that structure.
That's right.
Yeah, it's the structure.
the structure.
The use isn't in question.
It's the
It's
structure.
a non-conforming structure.
That's what I
It's
mean.
the structure.
The non, right.
It's because of the
So-
fire
so it-
piece.
it-
That's what is in question.
So can we officially say that for this instance, that the owner has not voluntarily discontinued the structure, and such discontinuance is not evidenced by an intent not to reestablish the building
Well,
or
the owner
structure?
right now is the town.
Right. And we have not intended to discontinue the structure. We were actually going
Oh, we need
to
that in
raise it and try to sell it.
Well, then that's what you've
But
done.
even if we do that, we still need to know whether or not the new buyer can rebuild as is. Based on this section right after the highlight, do you think that this qualifies? There was no
Up to the
intent,
ZBA.
Lori,
no intent to abandon the structure.
Trying to figure out
ZBA can say no. You're correct. However, staff always gives comments. They don't direct them how to vote, but they give comments. And if they give comments based on the town attorney's recommendation, I cannot see that they would say no. They're just as eager as we are to move things forward.
But we are. We're not willing to say yes. And it's our ordinance.
I know, but I'm saying for one thing, I don't think we should change.
The interpretation
Structure.
is all over the place here.
Right.
I think me and Lori are on the same page. I think Charlie nobody voluntarily gave it up.
No,
Nobody said, nobody, I'm not saying that either.
No.
I'm
Right,
not saying it.
okay.
That's the
And that's what it
structure.
says, unless they did.
The structure.
Structure, not use. We're dealing with structure.
They gave up the structure.
A building or structure may only be deemed abandoned
Right.
if the owner voluntarily discontinues the structure and such discontinuance is
Owner-
an intent not to
If the town.
The owner at the
tore it down,
time.
It's different.
The owner at the time.
You're right. If the town tore
Yes.
it down.
So,
abandon the use, they abandoned.
no, they abandoned the structure, the right to rebuild.
What they're saying.
And the
Structure.
town hasn't torn the structure down, so they haven't abandoned the use of it either.
Yeah. The
the
problem here,
structure.
I think, is that the developer can demolish the building tomorrow if he wanted to.
Yep.
But can he build exactly that same structure again in the same place? The state statutes say he should be able to.
Yeah.
Right.
The fact that the reason he needs to demolish the building in the first place is because there was a fire.
Right.
And that's what's holding this up. So the reason that it needs to be demolished in the first place is calling in question the ability to do anything with it.
But again, I think that it all gets back to we don't want to have an abandoned building sitting forever without any action taken to it. So I think the intent is that as long as somebody is actively pursuing an avenue to rebuild, that he should always have that avenue available to him. But as soon as he leaves it alone and has no intention of rebuilding it, as indicated by the owner took the money and he went elsewhere with the money and he wasn't going to reinvest the money there. So at that point, it was abandoned. Regardless of what our interpretation is, it was abandoned. So at that point, it should be demolished or it should be razed or something should happen to it so it's just not sitting there. And unfortunately, we're so slow in acting that it's 5 years later or 4 years and 9 months and whatever, and it's still in the same state. And I think that, just for the neighborhood to be living with, burnt out buildings like that, if we had 5 of them all in the same block, what would it look like? And I think that that's the whole reason why we set up this time limit, only so that, we could at least take action on something so that it's not an eyesore and it's not a blight to the, owners and the property, owners that are right there.
But as Jen just said, it's not an issue of raising it. It's an issue of rebuilding it because it's a non-conforming structure.
Again, then you can always rebuild it. I think that that was never
Not according
the question.
to this.
Well, it's a little difficult right now because we're talking in the abstract. There's no pending application before us. We have statutes printed out. Now, but what I'm saying is, could there be an application where you have a situation that's similar and someone tries to show that, well, the reconstruction or rebuilding is really evidenced by the town's intent. They were looking around. Can we consider reconstruction or rebuilding to be steps towards reconstruction or rebuilding? Is that a reasonable interpretation? Maybe. Maybe you don't need a variance. It's hard to tell because we don't know exactly what steps were taken and exactly what times.
And exactly what he wants to do.
So I don't see.
But according to state statute, it shouldn't matter.
But
the time frame.
How long is the town of
It
Enfield
doesn't
own the
prohibit a
building?
time frame. It prohibits excluding intent.
I think only a year or so.
Okay. The property that burnt down on the corner of Pearl Street and High Street, remember that a couple of years ago? The town of Enfield was all over those responsible owners to tear that building down. And they pushed and pushed and pushed and fines and this and that. And it was less than a year. Town of Enfield's owned this eyesore for a year and done nothing with it. So the town is just as responsible as the negligent owner who ran. We got a man who wants to buy it, build it the way you want it in the historic sense, and he wants to be able to put it back where it was. When you tear something down, Now it's your empty parking lot, it's your green space that you want, and he can't put it up. I don't blame him for not tearing it down. I don't blame the town for not tearing it down. And here we are tying it up again when she's saying the ordinance can be read to where she can say, yes, build it again. And it gets torn down next week when they close. Chris Bromson is saying, or the town attorney, whoever it is saying,
Oh,
you know,
Maria.
okay, yeah, it reads this, but, you know, if we don't want to challenge it, go to ZBA. He's saying the same thing.
I just am confused now. If indeed the director of planning is correct, then why are we having this session? Why isn't she just going ahead and doing what she needs to do to help the man move along?
Because it's your regulations.
It's in our regulations.
But you're saying our regulations are wrong.
But they're still there.
So we need to know whether or not you would enforce this or not.
I guess at this point, you know, if there is somebody who is willing to rebuild it in a timely fashion from this date forward, then I believe that he should have that option. You know, and I think that's what we're all saying, is that you shouldn't leave something that is unsightly in place as blight for the neighborhood. It needs to be addressed quickly. And if it was addressed quickly, then all of a sudden, you know, somebody can come back and should be able to rebuild it. But I think that realistically what it really says is that, you know, the building should be removed after a 12-month period, and if there's no action on it. And maybe it's not really saying that, or maybe I'm interpreting it wrong.
What if it is removed within that 12 months? They raise it, but they don't have the money or the capital or
corner of Pearl Street and
whatever,
High Street.
and they want to rebuild it, but you know, it's going to take them 5 years to get the money and the backing to do it. Are they going to be able to rebuild in kind for a non-conforming structure?
Will you consider those 5 years to be an attempt to rebuild? Maybe you do.
Yeah.
If that's how, I think there's a way to read the regulations to be completely in conformance with the statute. Do you consider the time period between burn down and rebuilding efforts? Can you show efforts? Because that shows your intent, right?
Yeah.
And if you can show within that time period there were efforts, even if you weren't, you know, shoveling the ground, maybe you read it that way.
Even foreclosure and the whole bit would be part of.
Maybe that's how you read it.
Right.
I think it's a way. I think there's a way to interpret our current regulations without just completely disregarding them to give effect and harmony to the general statutes. And I don't know if this case presents that factual scenario. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think there's a way to read it.
Yeah.
But why are you fighting so much to keep that in there when we do have blight laws? She just went through everything this town does, and Pearl and High was an example of how that happened because there was a responsible owner.
Yeah.
But now, because of the time it took, they can't rebuild that property, and it's ugly. It's right in the main intersection of Thompsonville, and they can't do anything with it with this regulation, which shouldn't be there. Why do you want? I mean, this particular one property is a loophole. The owner is a criminal. They are trying to find him, to put charges against him. And when that happens, then the town could have gone back if they raised the building and tried to get some money for it. It didn't happen. But right now we're trying to resolve it so it doesn't sit another 5 years like it is.
But we don't even have anything to resolve. I mean, we don't have what he plans to do with it, when he
She
plans.
just said he wants to put it back the way it was.
Right.
The memorandum of understanding would require it be done within a certain time frame.
Okay. Well, we can agree to disagree all we want. I think Sarah's right. She's an attorney. She knows how to read the. No. But I'm saying she knows the statutes and how to interpret them a little better than I do, and I don't have any problem with interpreting it that way. If you want to take out the 12 months, you, Lori, yourself said that every town had a time limit. So I would be curious to see, is the 12-month reasonable, or should we put it to 2 years?
What does the state say?
No time limit.
Okay.
Well, then,
It doesn't
what are the?
prohibit
It doesn't.
a time limit. It says you must look to intent.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
That's what I'm saying. Is I think I think Rich had this comment before.
Yes.
There's a time limit there because in general, do you want the house to be there for a very long time, sitting there? Now we have blight ordinances, but does it serve a purpose sometimes? I think maybe. is there a way to read it in the times you're talking about, Ken, to give effect to the intent portion of the general statutes? I think so. And I don't think that you need to worry about changing the regulations when you have that case come along, because there's a way to do both with it as is, I think.
Yeah.
So when the
Well,
town,
it's interesting.
when the town took this over, I mean, when the citizen came and said, I'd be interested in purchasing this property, the town was in the process of going out for an RFP to have the building raised. But there was still a question as to whether or not they'd be able to rebuild as is, or as was, as the case may be.
And then would the commission consider those attempts to be an intent to reestablish the structure? I don't know what the commission would do, but that could sound reasonable.
Well, it would come back here, and it would be up to us whether.
Exactly.
Why would it come back here?
Why would it? Yeah.
All it would need, if staff has got the direction from the commission and we feel that the intent was
Sign
there,
off on it.
then
Okay.
they come in for a building permit and we sign off.
All right, yeah.
So this is why we want to make sure that we're all on the same page. So we don't,
Well, if they're going to have the exact exterior of the building, because it says here, changes to the exterior appearance of a building may be permitted following approval of a site plan by the commission, when the commission determines that such change is more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood.
Well,
So,
it should
you know,
come back here.
so it could come back here for the non-conforming. The other
so
thing I wanted to
if
say
we
about...
we felt that the architecturals were different,
Yeah.
then we would say you've got to go back to PZC.
Yes, and the other thing I was going to say is, like, when it comes to blight and stuff and the fines, I've known plenty of properties in town that have had blight, and they've had thousands and thousands, $20,000 worth of fines put against those homes, and nothing has changed.
Right.
And then when they go to sell the property, they either have to, like, they finally get the property or whatever, and then they have to turn around and forgive some of those.
Yep.
So really, when, you know, yes, it does
I
effective,
understand. It's private ownership.
but
And
it's still...
sit on the council, sit in their chair, and you try to enforce
Oh,
these
yeah.
laws. You're an attorney. It's not as easy as you're paying. If you don't cut your lawn, you're paying.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not that easy.
Oh, I
to
know it's
enforce.
not.
That's
This
why-
particular property is an eyesore. It's a
Yes.
huge problem.
I drive
I'm
by it
glad to see
every
somebody
single day.
is
I do.
invest the money
drive by
to
it.
put it back the way it is instead of having another
And you got
dirt
the odor
lot
down there, too.
Absolutely.
You have the odor down there, too.
Right. I can't believe it's set that way.
I
This
agree
is-
100% with you,
That's
Ken.
why I'm saying.
I
And-
just think that we got to be careful of the process.
Oh, okay,
That's
but
what's
the
most
process,
important.
The way she's reading it, she should be able to sign his building permit tomorrow, and the town closes in 30 days. Hopefully, they raise it by Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, the safety issue alone, I don't know why the town hasn't torn it down.
Yeah.
The town
They-
only.
they
the
were about
specialty
to.
is up
No,
there.
no, I
the
understand.
liability
Yeah.
for the town, yeah.
Is he going to put the same architectural structure up?
That's what my understanding is. I'm going to be meeting with him on Monday, so. But I didn't want to meet with him until I'd spoken to the commission.
Well, no, I think they
No,
agreed
no,
that
I
it's
think
gotta
we
be
were all
done,
agreed that we.
But we don't want to remove the 2 years. You got to have something there.
Adam Fiore.
And she can sign off on it
Because
because
this
it's
is
been
a-
around so long, but not change
zone,
the
the
regulations for one
You
person.
know,
The intent was to,
And I'm sure that the town can do almost whatever they want anyway.
they do.
I think we have a good basis on moving forward.
Now let's move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
There is a timeline on this sale that he has to raise that house.
There will be, yes.
And if you could pass that right to the town
No,
attorney,
it's already
town
there.
manager.
I've already seen the documents.
Good.
So it's already there. They're still in draft form, but.
Okay, discussion of River Gateway.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's all.
No, it's not a big thing.
More of a update.
It's just an update. So, we've been looking into the language of the River Gateway regulations, and so basically what we're doing, what we've done so far is first reworked those descriptions of the River Gateway, each district, so that they match what's actually in the use tables and allowed, so people aren't confused with what the open space especially really entails. So we did that. We also looked into the use tables themselves to make sure that the things that people can do now aren't necessarily being taken away. That sort of was a concern of many people at the last workshop. So we will have, what we're working on is a PowerPoint of things that we believe should, to address concerns of the public, be added, changed, revised, anything like that. And obviously, we won't put it into the final document just yet because you guys haven't seen that. But that's what the presentation next week will be for. And of course, we're adding sections, as you saw on the agenda previously, regarding low-impact development and affordable housing, possibly adding sections for those items into the River Gateway regulations. So I guess we just want to get a feel on where you're at, how you're feeling about us adding those types of things into the regulations. So
I like the idea.
I don't see a problem.
Okay.
No, but we've always had them on Thursdays, so it's, and we've tried them other days, and that didn't work either, so we just left, went
Can we
back.
make it the following week, 4th, Thursday? Oh, no, you can't. The 5th?
And we're also adding definitions. That's the other thing we're working on, so that people get a better understanding of what the use tables are saying they can do or not do.
I mean, that language is in our plan of conservation and development. So, I mean, and that is something we should be following and should be continuing to do. So I do definitely have no issue with having that in there. All I care about is make sure that we have the definitions of things. I'm huge on those definitions.
Yeah, so we'll be working on definitions. When I was at Casio, there was someone who was sitting next to me from another community, and they have standards for low-impact development where you have to choose. They have a list of options where you can say, like, oh, put pervious pavers in, or solar panels, something like that. It doesn't have to be solar panels. I know those can be expensive, but you have to do something low impact, and they had a list, and each developer had to choose one or two things from that list to include in the project. So it's not like we're asking for someone to put like an entire like smart building in, but you know, one aspect of your project can be something that will help the community and the environment. So. So that's it.
I'm looking for.
Mary, did you have something you wanted to say?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, no.
No, we're going on correspondence, and I don't know if the rest of you have it, and I think I probably left it in my paper. Yep. Oh, you have it, okay. I didn't know if you all had it. So a letter from Nutmeg Solar.
Yeah.
And this was never brought to, so I don't know. The only one I know is,
It was already cited by the state, so we don't have anything to do
yeah,
with
that,
it.
I know, but if there was opportunities to go, and I know that they did have a,
That's a German farm.
yeah, I know that they did have meetings with the public out there. What was done or what was said, I don't know, because that was all handled by the department, Michael.
So,
And,
I'm sorry, continue. I apologize.
and I know they're taking a lot of trees out of there, and they did make some adjustments, but it's taking to me, it takes a good piece of agricultural soil out of production for a couple of years or a few years.
Yeah, probably about 20.
About 20.
They're growing tobacco.
Well,
Not between
they're growing
the solar
tobacco, all
panels,
right.
but
No, but that's what
yeah.
they're growing on the land right now.
Yeah, they are, I know, I worked on that. I worked on that many years ago on that piece of property. Oh, yeah.
So I did speak with the developer today, and they would like to hold a site walk next Wednesday at 11. So I'm sorry, it's during
Oh,
the day and
are
I know
they
many
plan-
people work, but if anybody would like to go, I'd like to know if you're going, because if I know that there's going to be more than 2 people, then it's a quorum, and
Yeah, or-
then I might just advertise it as such anyway. That with wetlands.
I would like to go.
Do you know, because the P&Z took trips, how many years ago? Up to Holyoke, and they had done one, and the ones that both of them, the ones that we went in, had taken and gravelled, heavy stone gravel over all the land. To me, if that's what they're going to do, ruins the soil up there. Of course, I could go in and take a rock sorter and sort the soil out and dig it all back out, but I don't know. But that's what they did up at those.
They probably put weed blocker under the rocks.
Well, yeah.
So they don't have to maintain it.
Yeah, probably did. I don't know. They didn't go in, but it was a good layer of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
It was it looked like, trap rock.
Now, would they, and because this is basically private property, and in whatever number of years they turn it back over to the property owner, wouldn't they be responsible
I don't
for
know. I'm
cleaning
just
it up?
saying
Well, it says they have to put
Right.
it back the way
So
it
they
was.
would have to,
That's what the lease reads.
if that's the way, I don't know, so, because
That's up
we're
to
not
them.
privy
I
to
just-
that, so I'm gonna guess that they would have to.
Yeah, so you go in there with a bucket
When
loader, you
the
get
s-
all the stone out and bring in topsoil and put it back.
Well, I wouldn't have to, yeah.
Sorry.
All right,
When
I
the
just-
panels are removed,
I'm sorry.
when the panels are removed, after they've gone through their expected lifespan, they'll be removed and the property will remain in Jarmuck's or the owner's property. I mean,
I just think it's
theoretically,
too
he could
bad
sell
for
it in the
that
meantime,
area.
so.
It is
But the question is if you're interested in the site walk, just please let us know. They'd like to know about how many people are coming, and we need to know whether we need to notice it.
You have to advertise it.
Yeah, so we probably will notice it as a site walk if I know that there's more than one person interested. Is anybody interested that you think you might go, but you're not sure? Yeah, okay, so we'll probably just notice it. We're going to get more details, probably tomorrow I'll get them as to where they're going to have parking and things like that, so I'll let you know. We'll email it to everybody. Is that okay for emails? Everybody likes emails?
Does our regulation say anybody who lives within a mile of this gets free electricity?
Sorry. I'm moving. Oh, wait.
3/4 of a mile, Ken, just not quite close enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Correspondence, anybody? The problems?
Just a quick note, I attended the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities annual convention this year. It was really good. I've got a couple of presentations I'd like to share at some point in my email, and I'll send them.
Did you go to the LTR one? Long range or
No,
long-term
but
recovery?
I attended the transit-oriented development
good.
financing one. And what was interesting about it was not geared towards
TIF
tools. TIF. It was not geared towards TIF. I wanted to see that, but it was geared towards grants and financing that is offered by certain federal agencies to private developers who wish to create a TOD-related plan. And so it was something that was interesting, and I'm sure there were a lot of economic development heads there, essentially, that they could then say to potential developers, make sure you look into this program. You might be eligible for financing that you might not get in other sources. So that was interesting. I think there was like TIFIA and RFA. You have to show that there's been a nexus to some transit center, among other requirements. So it was very interesting, and I will, if I can get my hands on it, share a copy with the office.
I'd love to see that, actually.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually meeting with somebody on Monday regarding TIF.
I will
So-
get on that.
He may already know about it.
Any administrative approvals?
No.
Okay.
Item to bring up with you. So, we've been looking at how the office runs and how meetings run as well, and the scheduling of meetings. And we were wondering if you might be able or willing to switch your nights from first and third to second and fourth Thursdays in the future. The problem is that we've got wetlands and zoning, planning and zoning on the same weeks, and the precursor and the post-meeting requirements for staff are substantial, and we have to do both things for all the commissions the same week.
As long as it keeps it on, I don't know.
We've been having these other
as long as
Thursday
it's a
meetings.
Thursday, huh?
We've been having these Thursday meetings.
Well, yeah.
So here's the thing. So here, I'm going to pass this out.
Would it hurt moving wetlands to the second?
That's why I was
Well, the
wondering.
meeting's on that night.
Yeah, but it was Wednesday.
Well, Lori, I already have, that would make 3 meetings on that same second Thursday of every month that I have.
understand that it's going to be inconvenient for some people. However, right now, it's very inconvenient for the public. So if somebody comes in and gets approved at a wetlands meeting, they have less than a day to amend their map for the next Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
They can present at the same time.
They
You just
didn't
can't
used to
get
meet on
approval.
Thursday, I don't think. When did they?
I don't, when I was here, these were staggered. I don't know when they got
They
unstaggered.
weren't met on the same night.
Yeah, so I don't understand why they aren't staggered, but I don't know any
Must
town
have
that
moved
has them
their
in the same
dates
week.
somehow before.
They did.
They did. We've never.
Right, and now they're holding the ground, force them to move.
Yeah.
Agree with
Hold
Ken.
line, Charlie.
Hold line, Charlie.
They had to have moved because
When it was presented, there were several members that have other commitments
Right.
on that specific Tuesday. It wasn't rejected. They would just have to go out and find new members, which
Yeah.
it's a cohesive group, and we'd like to keep it together.
Yeah.
So is this.
Yeah. So here, here's the thing.
can't
We're
lose
trying
Linda.
to streamline development. We're trying to streamline the process, and in so doing, if we could move one of these commissions, then it makes it a lot easier for staff to respond to the needs of the people and the commissions and the statutes.
does that affect them if they took the 2 and 4 or whatever the other dates were?
Well, in essence, I look at it this way. I don't think we should get bullied to move, but
Well, they caused the problems.
wetlands, right, but wetlands is the first stop.
It is.
And then going along with what Lori said, and I don't want to get bullied by wetlands, but on this one, they meet, now they have a week to get their things together to come to us.
Right.
Which makes more sense for us to move, but you tell them if they move again, we're not.
Yeah, but
Well, why can't they? We had there was a suggestion that they meet once a month, which would free up time for people to present it to planning and zoning. And I thought, Lori, I know staff is well overutilized, but it was my understanding that it was going to be looked into because really, wetlands doesn't have that much. Most of the wetlands in town are developed, okay? So you don't have any pristine egret sites left in town. So a lot of towns, not just Lori's former town, but a lot of towns have one wetlands meeting a month. And that allows people more time to go to planning and zoning.
We don't have that call. That's your.
I know, and we had asked staff to look into it.
Look into it as a matter of how many applications you have. So the question is, even if you went to one meeting, it would still be beneficial for the planning and zoning to move because there's only so many nights this room is
Right.
available.
But if you went-
if you kept to the first meeting, if you only stayed to the first meeting, then.
But realistically, even if we staggered it, they only got 3 days to prepare some drawings because we have to have it in our package by Friday. Even if they met the Tuesday before, and we skip a week, they
Well,
only
it's-
have 3 days to prepare those drawings to get it in our packet by Friday. So, and they're never going to do that.
Well, they're certainly going to have a better chance of doing it than having one day.
No,
But
because
quite
with
honestly,
that
I don't
one day-
see why you
with-
couldn't
with that-
receive
with that one
plans
day-
that are revised with a minor
With
modifications.
the one day is that it's not in our package if they get heard on Tuesday, because our packages are delivered to us the Friday before.
That's
So
right.
realistically, they don't even stand a chance for us to hear them in one day. So realistically, they get it in a whole week to present to us.
Right, but her first comment started with, and this is coming from the top, and it has for the last 15 years, is to streamline the process, is what the town is trying to do. Their department gets beat up, building gets beat up, wetlands gets beat up, because we're not pushing people through as a welcoming town. This town is
Well,
one of the
first
most
thing-
difficult towns to get it processed through, and these people are fighting to try to correct this and get Enfield a better reputation. I've lived it for 25 years. That's the whole reason for what she's saying right now. And if
We
you
don't
don't
have
do
the secretarial work we used to have. The women are, the two planners or assistant planners are doing it.
No, I understand that.
That's
I'm
right.
not blaming us, but they're giving us advice right now. This is going to help them streamline the process. Okay, wetlands
It will help
said
us
no.
do our job.
Let me throw another wrench into the whole thing. How about if planning and zoning absorbs inland wetlands in terms of, basically we're looking at all the maps anyways. And it's one of those kind of things where why can't we look at wetlands at the same time that we're looking at all the other things that are going on with the building
We used to
development?
have
That
it
is
when we
possible.
And, and then you're talking about streamlining it.
Legal?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we used to be combined, and we found it too difficult to handle both at the same
Yeah.
time. Of course, that was back when there was more.
Yeah, I was going to say,
wetlands.
I think that that's a great idea. It was at one time both together. I think that it was just some of the members perhaps were kind of like not moving forward enough with the applications.
No, they were.
So,
it was just you had both. You had to do. You switched your hats.
But
And it
could
was-
you,
Just like we do that.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
So an applicant sitting in front of us, we review wetlands and planning and zoning at the
Yes.
same time?
Yes, yeah, because even now when I look at the maps, I look at what's going on
So-
with,
so
with,
do
with
I,
all the
Rich.
drainage, with all the detention ponds, with everything
We're
that's
going
going
over
on.
it again and
We're
again.
going over it again. I'm
And
looking at
some-
what the road cuts are
some
and
we
what's
try to
going on there.
change, and they tell you-
And at that point, if once it's past wetlands, we don't have a lot of say in what they're doing. And if we're suggesting modifications in order to improve what we think,
I agree.
So-
then all of a sudden it's like, it's a win-win for everybody.
I have a quick question. Apart from resistance to change and other member commissioner commitments, is there sort of another reason why it's harder to move to just another week, same
I don't know,
frequency?
but usually when-
Because I hear staff
There-
is saying it's also tough for them to staff both meetings on the same week. So staggering them is going to be important no matter what. It helps not only for streamlining, but helps staff. So,
Usually, though, when you're appointed to a commission, you find out what night it is, and you set that night aside. And that's it. I mean, but this is.
But you've all been able to make the other Thursdays.
we've been meeting every week because of River
problem.
Gateway anyway.
We could go
Well,
back
if
to that.
Thursday's not a good night for P and Z, for public hearings,
These people, Rich.
well, where would you put planning and zoning? I like Rich's idea, but where?
I can't put them on the second Thursday because the Republicans got the hall here.
Yeah,
Well, you'd have to have a conversation with them.
they wouldn't move.
Yeah, right.
It's like the Democrats wouldn't move.
No, they would go to another area.
Go to- the Enfield room is
downstairs. I mean,
available.
Come on, Charlie, they're having a meeting, and yes, they use the council room, but they could go downstairs. So, I mean,
But would they be willing?
I'm sure they would.
Because
look at
town
the
business
wetlands
takes
thing
precedence
first?
over.
Yeah.
So I could address the wetlands thing. You can have a combined commission. Most towns have split the commissions, as Charlie said. It's a lot of different data. It's different statutes, different regulations. So you would all have to become wetlands agents. You would all have to go through deep training, and you'd have to make sure that you understood the time frame of the applications, because you could theoretically be hearing the same application for both the same night, but you can't act on the planning and zoning one because you have to wait 30 days for the wetlands for the petition period to take effect.
We already got the aquifer.
Yeah, and we have.
And you have the aquifer, and by the way, you don't have flood regulations, so you need flood regulations, and that is also the PZC. So
Have the
most
planning
towns
piece.
have separated it out, not just to the point that it's conservation and inland wetlands, they've separated out inland wetlands and conservation, because they all have different purviews under the statutes.
And-
So it
But we
does
also
become
have-
complicated, and if you want to get out before midnight, when your meetings are here,
That's why
so.
we gave it up. It was too,
Yeah.
it was really too much.
Well, I think too, the planning piece, it's important to be able to have that piece where we're planning as well, because doing the aquifer, hearing applications and stuff, but also planning and changing our regulations and stuff takes time. It's a lot.
I just have one question. I understand how terrible it is to have a whole bunch of packets to get out in a condensed time, but I was told by one of the staff that it's very hard in the other 2 weeks because they have to do the notice of action, all the letters.
We have to do that for both
legal
of them.
ads.
All the time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you have packets to do every single week, you're
Hey,
going to have...
Ginny, you used to do this. You
I
know that
know.
it's a lot easier when it's staggered.
No, but
When
think
I
you
was
need
here and you and I
more-
were working together, we had staggered meetings, and it made it a lot easier.
yes, but I also think you need good staff. You have 2 good assistant planners. I think you need good staff.
Well, we also do need good staff, but right now, the 2 assistant planners are doing everything.
That's right.
I mean,
The only
because
thing is-
the one assistant clerk is basically doing all of our permits. So, which leaves them to do all of these other notices. I mean, we do need to get a Casio certified administrative clerk in there. I'm going to be asking for that for next year, but that's, our workload is huge. So,
Independent of the staffing, I
gonna-
heard you say a couple of times that
Before we make
Thursdays
a
are
move
not a
on
good
this
night.
tonight, I think
a
we
lot
should
of
have a
people, if they're going on
conversation
vacation, they
with
leave
the town
Thursdays.
council.
Thursday's like the new
Because
Friday
the town
now.
council is having a very hard time
For many
finding
people.
people to
So why are you
volunteer
trying to move it to another
for all the
Thursday?
boards.
Just
At
what is it
least
that
it
you-
will
could-
eliminate
I'd rather,
a lot
what
of
is ideal?
positions and save them a lot of headaches, and also let them get qualified people who know what they're doing. Liz Ballard stepped down. It's hard to replace somebody with 30 years experience.
Oh, I know.
And Charlie, you've dealt with how many members over your career? They sit down green as could be, and
Well, that's why one reason the alternates were set in, because when we first operated, we only had the 7.
and this, I think, but I think this is a bigger thing, and I think the town council should be involved in the discussion. And, I, like when I signed up for the council, it was my choice to sit there till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Absolutely,
I
that's what I said.
volunteered. And if I didn't like it, I could step down.
That's why
And
I'm
it's no
saying about
different here.
changing their
And-
meeting nights. When you get appointed, you
Right.
know the
No, I
meeting nights,
agree.
either
I
take it
agree.
or...
If you don't like what's coming, you can always resign.
Yep.
I understand that it's going
That
to
doesn't-
cause some issues,
that
and that
doesn't
there's
help
some
her
people
right
that would
now.
not be
That
able to
doesn't
do
help
it.
the-
Well, I'll have a conversation with them tomorrow.
Can't hear what Lori's saying.
Yeah, sorry.
So I had to ask. I really think that it would help the flow of everything from the staffing all the way up to the clients. So, and we are looking at whether or not we should have 1 or 2 meetings for wetlands, but even if we had just 1, it would still be that same first week. And it does make a difference whether the applicant has 1 day versus 2 or 2.5 days to get their work modified for the planning and zoning. Because if they're just minor modifications, they could put that in the plans and they could get them to us by Friday.
Well, if they had it on the first week, could we hear that same thing on our third week?
No, you have to have...
Oh, you're talking if you were the same commission?
No, if, the way it is now, if we get theirs, schedule their applicants' meeting.
Yeah, they're going to have to wait an additional 2 weeks, even though, they just had, maybe 2 hours of drafting to do. But
It's secretarial work, isn't it?
I know,
Don't
I
have
was
to handle it
saying
there.
though, but it would give you guys time 2 weeks to get it set up for us.
I'm not understanding what you're getting at.
If you did the first of the month, or the first Thursday of the month,
Michael
their
had a
meeting,
chart he was
and the
working
third-
on.
and the third Thursday of the month for our meeting with that subject matter. It gives you 2 weeks to go from,
I understand that, but that's not streamlining.
Michael had a chart that he was working on, supposedly, or it was to streamline the thing, and he was working it with Roger, and we had it up downstairs, and I thought we had it down pretty, so did this meeting change happen after the fact that he had that? Because I don't remember it being.
No. I think that the meeting changed when they separated wetlands from planning and zoning.
No, the meeting nights?
Yeah, because at one time, there was one agency that covered everything.
That was us, yes.
Yes,
Right.
but then when they separated wetlands out and made it another commission, they had to give it another night.
Right.
So
Right,
that's
but
what happened.
20 years ago, I was the inland wetlands agent here, and I never went to planning and zoning.
Right.
I shouldn't say I didn't go to planning and zoning, but we had a separate night for wetlands.
Yeah, you
20 years ago.
It wasn't this night, it wasn't Thursday.
So I don't remember what night it was.
No,
but-
Charlie, I meant that if it were one commission, everything was one entity on Thursday nights, there wouldn't be a reason for Tuesday nights. There has to be a
Yeah,
separate.
but you can't handle it. She's already said you have to be trained and have the training, which.
I mean, you're talking more of a complication than what I'm proposing. I'm just saying.
Oh, merging the boards?
Yeah. All I'm saying is, would you be willing to go to the second and fourth instead of the first and third? If you could go to Wednesday, that would be fantastic, but I'm not asking, I'm trying to do baby steps here.
Wednesday.
If what you're proposing is going to create issues for some folks anyways, why don't you just propose the optimum for the department and what you think is going to provide the best service to the community?
Do you think
'Cause
merging the
instead of-
two boards is streamlining it?
No,
No.
not at all.
No, it'd kill you.
But
It's
she
just-
doesn't think Thursday is the optimum night. I mean, I'm not
No,
speaking for
yeah,
you, but I heard you
no,
say a
that's
couple
true.
of
I
nights.
don't.
So
You know,
propose.
the thing is, so for instance, the fact that you have a Thursday night meeting and you decide to set something to public hearing at the next meeting, we have to get in the next day and make sure that the legal notice is to the paper by noon.
Roger had a timeline for this, that they had to be in by a certain, I don't.
Right, well, if you make the public hearing for the following meeting, we have to legalize, we have to put the legal ad in the
don't
paper
do
by
it.
noon the next day.
We don't do it unless they're ready. We don't set up for the next meeting that they.
But if they
come in.
are ready, and we also have to do the legal notice of action, we have
Right,
to do,
yeah,
so
you do.
that's got to get to paper by noon. So all these things
And
have to
what
get
was
done
the
by noon, and then
timeframe
we're,
that Roger had said that if it was in certain time and it was working at then, it had to be done and ready to go, and then he had by a certain time before it went on our agenda or before we considered it.
Roger was requiring 25 days ahead of your meeting, and that worked for some things, but for other smaller applications, again, we have to ask you guys for permission for administrative approvals too. So smaller applications that come in are ready to go, and they gave it in maybe like a week and a half, 2 weeks before the meeting. It wasn't. That's sort of another issue that we're having. Is there's a lot of applications that come through for this commission, and the 25 days was working for bigger projects like Metro Park, where we had that time span to review those huge plans. But then we had to kind of stray from that 25 days for smaller applications, and then we're not being consistent with everyone, so we run into that too.
Okay, and I have to say, Roger's not here.
No, I
We
know
have
that.
to work with Lori, so we have to
Well, but the
throw
thing
all
is-
that old
Yeah.
I'm
stuff
trying to
away
figure
that Roger did.
we had a time frame that
Right,
worked.
but
I will
we
look
have
for
to
that
throw it
time
away,
frame
and
because
we
it's got to be
need-
someplace.
Right, and we need to work with Lori, and I think we need to have her look at this, and if you're saying Thursday nights aren't good,
No, the first
I
one
don't
is-
think they're optimal.
Or maybe a
Public.
Wednesday.
Well,
Well, I
we
think
got to
the-
look.
the-
Council
I'm just
meets
saying.
Mondays.
I'm just
When does
saying,
Board
no.
of Ed meet?
I'm just Tuesday.
The Wednesdays would probably be the best. And
I'm
we would
just,
have to.
just throwing a Wednesday out.
Wednesdays would
I'm
be
not
good.
saying Wednesday is the day. I'm just asking her, this would give them time to get the legal notices out, to do a little bit more of what they need to do to get our packages ready, or whatever other boards that they have to get ready. I'm just throwing the day out. I'm not saying that Wednesday's the only day, but I think we have to look at what Lori is asking us. She's asking to change the day of the week and maybe staggering it to a
She said Thursday wasn't a
different
good day
week.
for the public.
I agree
Second
with
and
I agree
fourth
with Linda.
is
I agree with Guillermo. I agree with helping staff do whatever it is they need to do, not only for themselves but for the community. So I would like to explore that. I'm looking at this calendar here, and it looks like there are some conflicts there. But I would love to look into whether any of those could move, including, it looks like the Democratic Town Committee meetings are on
Yep.
Wednesdays.
And
I'm sure
historic.
discussions can be had, and I'd really like to help facilitate that.
But you were asking for the second and fourth Tuesday rather than the first and third, Thursday, I mean, the second and fourth Thursday rather than the first and
First and
third,
third.
right?
Or
Not
perhaps
changing the day.
the second and fourth Wednesdays. What if
Well,
we
the
moved it
second,
to?
right, the second and the fourth
Wednesdays look like
Wednesday?
they take-
Yeah, so every other Wednesday.
Wednesdays
the
are-
second.
So we're either the second or fourth Wednesday or Thursday.
So the Democratic Town Committee meets in the chambers.
Do the
Well,
same thing the Republicans would.
they would go
Yeah.
downstairs.
I mean, obviously, I'd have to, have a conversation with them.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's not a public meeting. It's a committee that I'm not discounting, but,
No, of
they
course
have
not.
their function.
Right.
They could use downstairs. I'm just throwing these things out. These are not
As
set in
long as
stone.
for the Republicans and the Democrats downstairs is available.
Well, you know,
I know
let's
You'd be
worry about our
amazed at how
own
busy
meetings.
this
Let's not
place
worry
is.
about anybody else.
I'll worry about the other meetings.
Yeah, I think that what we should do is
wanna know if you're
focus
open
on the
to it.
fact that,
Yes, I'm open
historically
to
we've
it.
been meeting on Thursdays. And I believe that, historically we've been meeting on Thursdays, and that Thursdays seem
You
to
were
be,
saying the
it's
second,
worked
fourth,
for
Tuesday,
20 years or 50 years, and all of a sudden it doesn't work, which doesn't make any sense. So I think we should just focus on who should change their day. And regardless, it's going to be an inconvenience for somebody, whether inland and wetlands changes or planning and zoning changes. And realistically, I think that what you have to do is look at the personnel that's going to get most affected by the day change, from a first to a second, and
Or
from a
just switch it
third
to
to a
where we had
fourth.
it.
So, but eventually, everything is going to sort of equalize itself. Again, it's going to come to equilibrium. The people who can attend won't attend. We'll get new members to fill in, and everything will be fine. So, regardless of whether it's inconvenient for planning and zoning or it's inconvenient for inland and wetlands, somebody just needs to make an executive decision, because somebody's going to get inconvenience and somebody's not going to be able to make it. So,
She just
Thank
made
you.
it.
right, and
Just
just
said Wednesdays, the second and the fourth.
yeah,
Right.
but historically we've been meeting on Thursdays.
But see, you're right there, Rich. It's inconveniencing you, and you just said, forget the people
No.
it inconveniences. You just said it to me.
Just decide,
was
and I will
kidding.
show up whenever you want.
Just for interest,
I was trying to just make it simple and just change the Thursdays.
I hate to
but
see
if
because we have a good group here, and it's very
You do.
We don't want to lose
experiences.
Linda.
And you
I'm
got
just saying, Lori,
second and-
I will change my schedule to meet whatever
How many
commitments I have to have.
Wednesday-
hired a new planner. We should
Let's-
listen to her
with
and
one-
help her.
Please, with Wednesday, how many would be available on Wednesday, the second or fourth? Let's see. Nick
Whenever you
teaches.
have it, it would be.
Okay.
we have
What's our-
one maybe. Is it like a firm thing? No, Rick.
But I would also be available for second and fourth Thursdays.
Right?
If I had enough lead time, it would be okay, but
If we could do this, we'd probably start it in January. If we could do it.
Why don't we just leave it on Thursday, baby steps, and switch the weeks. One of the commissions staggers. I don't really care which
Oh,
one.
boy, that's going to be...
But-
no,
Make the
that's-
change.
Yeah, but
Oh, yes. If Wednesday's
baby
no
steps
problem...
work.
Baby steps. So we change to Thursday next week, and then 2 months from now we change to
I,
Wednesday.
you know
gonna
what?
confuse
I will
everybody.
come whatever night
Okay,
is
then.
available.
She
I don't care.
recommended it. We work for her. That's the
I
way
don't
look at it.
understand wetlands, because if they got appointed and they met on a certain day, then they understood that that was their job.
I think we're all in agreement.
Yes.
But
Do what you want.
Go for it, Lori.
Wednesday seems to be fine, except for Nick. And I hate
Thursday's
to...
fine,
Quick
except for
question, Nick, if you, and I know
I thought
that
Rick had an
classes
issue
get
too. Did you have an
scheduled.
issue on Wednesdays?
It will get resolved.
And again, Nick is probably the biggest issue because he has classes. But if you give them
Well, and
enough
Rich has a problem, I don't know.
for,
I'll work it out.
One way or another it can work out.
all right.
But we get hit with it, and it's not of our doing.
Okay.
And here's another one, along with her trying to streamline the process. The administrative reviews. This town never used to have them come. No, they didn't, Ginny. You could get them signed off right in the office if it met. Now they have to come, and they have to run it by us. I understand we had some issues with planners in the past, but we got to have confidence in our staff. And them having to get that on our agenda and bring that to us too.
No, I thought
definitely doesn't streamline a
Yeah.
process.
No,
doesn't take
I
much
agree.
time. It
I
comes right down.
thought you were talking about ARTs. I
also is-
Not
apologize.
ARTs. But I'm just saying, the administrative review should be handled
I agree.
in their office. It should not have to get our rubber stamp on it.
Well, there was another reason than that. It was also because it gave protection to the person that signed off and to well, just general overall protection. As we were talking before on allowing certain things and so forth. I know, I'm trying to. Okay, anything for anybody else? Well, I know I wasn't.
Yeah, I want to review the regulations page by page tonight.
No, Ken. Thank you very much.
Bring
Motion
the
to
coffee,
adjourn.
Ken.
Mary,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
Let's see what time it is. It's bad.